Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of my eyeshadow palette collection and declutter. So if you missed part 1, I tackled all of these baskets over here and I was able to empty one completely and really thin out everything on this side. So if you missed part 1, definitely check that out. But in today's video, we're going to be tackling this side of the room. So in part 1, I did the top drawer. So we're going to keep going down and starting with drawer number 2 and working our way across. So hopefully I'll be able to finish this in one video. We'll have to see how it goes. But why don't we go ahead and just jump right in and get started. Okay, let's move on to drawer number 2. This is my Sigma palettes, and I believe I have some Violet Voss underneath here as well. That's a name we haven't heard in a while, right? So anyway, let's check out Sigma first. I have so many Sigma palettes, but I just love them. They're, again, one of those brands that I just happen to collect. So first we have the Angela Bright collab. This is a newer palette from them, and they had sent it to me in PR recently. I haven't even gotten the chance to try it out yet. And I love Angela's channel, by the way. I just have to give her a shout out. She does so many eye looks, and often with older palettes that we already have in our collections. She has so many great tips for hooded eyes too. That's actually how I found her. So I definitely need to prioritize using this palette because I think the color story is so pretty. Next up, we have the Enchanted palette. So this one, you know, at first glance, I think it looks like a gorgeous palette, but it's just one that I don't reach for very often, and I'm not exactly sure why, because I like all of these colors. It's just, I think it kind of goes a little bit deep and smoky, especially with all of the matte shades here. So I have to be in the mood to do a smoky eye, which most of the time I'm not. So, you know, I do like the cooler tones that are in here, but, you know, I'll keep it because I do like the color story. Corda Rosa is another favorite of mine from Sigma. You can see this one is a little bit more well-loved. I really like the mix of like the warm tone neutrals and the pinks. I think it's just a really pretty combination. So I'm definitely keeping this. I really love the blush palette that goes along with this as well. Next up is the Alice in Wonderland palette. This one, I mean, I really don't use it all that much because it's a little more colorful. I do sometimes use it for comparisons and things like that. So I'm still gonna probably hang on to this one. Beauty and the Beast is their newest collab, and I really like this a lot. I think it has a little bit of color, but it's not too bright. So I find that I use this one a little bit more than Alice in Wonderland or the Cinderella palette, which is under here. Next we have Nomad. I love this one a lot. This is probably one of my favorite Sigma palettes ever. I just love the rosy tones. I think they really complement the pink undertone in my skin. So that's why I usually reach for palettes like this. And this duochrome right here is just insanely beautiful. So, all right, I'm gonna keep that one. Ambiance is another Sigma palette that is just a classic. I think it's just such an easy to wear, everyday neutral palette. It leans warmer, but it's not super warm. I don't feel like there's any orangey shades in here. You just have some warmer tone browns. So this is a really good everyday staple kind of a palette. Cinderella, which I mentioned before, is very similar to the Alice in Wonderland palette, but I think I like this one even better because even though it has color, they're not super bright. So when I do want to play with color, this is one that I definitely reach for. So I'm going to hang on to this one too. Next up is Sigma Untamed. So this one has a little bit more kind of jewel tones mixed with earthy shades. It's a little bit deeper and richer of a color story, but again, I just think it's really pretty. I'll give it to Sigma. Their palettes, for the most part, are not like boring color stories, and they're also not ones that we've seen over and over again. I think they're pretty innovative when it comes to their colors. So I'm going to keep this one as well. This next one was a collab with Diana Saldana. This is one that I've used it, but I feel like I have a lot of these colors in like their Cinderella palette, the Beauty and the Beast. I think this one is kind of a little bit redundant at this point, so I may actually declutter this one. Also, their Warm Neutrals palette. This is one that is just a classic. I actually had the older version that came in the old packaging, and then they updated it just to go along with all of their other palettes. So I got the new one not that long ago. They had sent it to me in PR, so I just decluttered my old one, and I have this new one that I really haven't touched yet, but this is another really really beautiful one, just if you like basic neutrals. The 9-pan palettes are also ones that I reach for really often. So we have Beachy. Rosy is definitely one of my favorites. I actually use this one a lot more than I was expecting to, but I just really love how this looks on me. Earthy has some kind of more muted, almost yellowy green shades. Ivy is a beautiful green palette that's not super bright, so this one is right up my alley as well. Fiery is probably the one that I use the least just because I don't really reach for these colors all that much, but I keep it because at this point I have the whole collection of all the 9 pans, so why not? The Ritzy palette is more neutrals. Spicy is another pretty one. I like this for warm tones. It's not as warm as the fiery one, so if I'm gonna reach for warm tones, I will grab this one. And then Hazy has those beautiful dusty mauve-y tones. So I'm gonna keep all of these just because I really like those a lot. And then they also had come out with slimmer versions of their larger palettes. So we have an Enchanted one, and these are not new shades. So if you have the original already, these are just like a selection of shades from the original larger palette. So basically a travel version. Really, I don't think I need both of them, but I mean, they don't take up that much room, so I guess I'll just hang on to them. So we have the warm neutrals version, the ambiance one. I mean, they are a good travel option, although I usually end up bringing like the 9 pans if I'm gonna travel with something. And then the Corda Rosa. All right, so then moving on to Violet Voss. These palettes are really, really old. I probably should let these go at this point. I'm not sure if they're sold at Sephora anymore. They might be, but probably the only place you can get these at this point is their website. And I thought this was a gorgeous summer palette. I really like this one a lot, but I can't even tell you how old this is. It's probably 7 or 8 at this point. Same thing with the Holy Grail palette. I remember Jaclyn Hill using this back in the day, and they did have a really nice formula. Oh my gosh, yeah, it's so buttery. It's making me not want to declutter it now. Even though I don't really reach for these because they're so old, but I do miss palettes like this. Actually, my favorite from them was Taupe Notch, and wait till you see this. If you like cooler tone neutrals, this was so pretty. There were some warmer shades in here, but it has such a variety of like taupey shades and gray shades, and those are the ones that I really reach for. So I'm kind of sad that this one isn't around anymore. And then we had the Hashtag palette, and I bought this because of Emily Noel. She was using this, and I just thought all of these colors looked really pretty. I especially like this bottom row with all the purples, but somehow they actually pair pretty well with the warmer shades. I wasn't expecting them to, but yeah, this is another one I just really don't use. So if anything, I'll probably declutter this one. I really should declutter them all. But again, the nostalgia is really getting to me right now. I do have these littler palettes from them as well. So I have Creme Brulee, which was warmer shades. Wild Dahlia, this one was super beautiful. I really like the muted tones in this one. And then Wildflower, which had more pinks and rosy shades. These were great travel palettes. I actually did bring these on trips with me back years ago. And the reason why I like them is because they're so small and easy to travel with, but you also get 10 shades. Most of the time, little palettes like this have 5 shades or 6 at the most. So I liked the variety and versatility that you would get in these little palettes. But again, I just feel like these are so old. I should probably declutter them. So I'm gonna put them over here. All right, so let's see what we've got. Okay, so final count, I'm decluttering 5 palettes and keeping 25. Definitely not doing so well on this section. All right, drawer number 3. Again, we have kind of a mishmash of brands in here, mostly indie brands. So let's start with this one from Ace Beaute. So this is the Floral Vintage palette, and they sent this to me a while ago. I have a few of their other palettes in, I think, in a different drawer. So I'm not sure why this one is in here. Probably it didn't fit in the other one. But I thought this had such a cool kind of 70s vintage vibe. I need to take this out and play with it again. I remember featuring it in a video and a lot of you guys really liked it. It's a cool combination of shades that you just don't see every day, and their formula is really, truly fantastic. They're a really nice indie brand. So I'm gonna keep this one. I also have a bunch of palettes from Nabla, and I really, really enjoy Nabla's formula a a lot. First up, I have some Nabla single shadows that I just threw into an old Coastal Scents palette. I love these. These are beautiful, and many of you guys actually told me which shades you recommended that I get. I don't know why, but some of them are kind of dried out. Not this one, but like this one. For some reason, it's not picking up. I got these from their website in Italy. They don't sell them at Ulta like they do most of their palettes. So if you're interested in their single shadows, you have to get them from the Nabla website, but I'm gonna hang on to these either way. The side-by-side palette is definitely one of my favorites from them. It is just a really nice, kind of warm and toasty, neutral color story. And you also have a couple cool shades down on the bottom here as well. As you can see, I've used this one a lot. Some of these shades I'm actually about to hit pan on, like this one, Better Society. It's just a really creamy, beautiful formula. All of these are, honestly. So I'm probably going to keep all of my Nabla palettes because I really love them and I use them. So next is the Secret palette. The artwork is just stunning. And again, I think one of the things I love about Nabla is their color stories are ones that you don't really see everywhere. They come up with some cool combinations of different shades. So I'm going to keep this one. Poison Garden is another one that I really like. And some of these shades surprise me. For example, Adoration looks like it's a white shade, but then when you swatch it, it's actually this gorgeous purple. So this was another palette that at first I kind of didn't know what to do with it. But once I started combining shades, I created some really pretty looks, so I guess I'll still hang on to that. Next is the Read My Mind palette. This one I got at Ulta, and I liked how they put the shadows together in quads, or you can just pick and choose, or you can use them in rows this way. So they had like the Scarlet Row, the Rosé, the Sage, and then the Honey. So there's really like so much you could do with this palette, and it makes it really easy to come up with different color combinations. The Dreamy palette is one of my favorites. This is the first palette I ever got from them, and I just love these super soft colors. I just think it's stunning. So I am hanging on to this one for sure. Then Dreamy 2 came out, and this one is definitely deeper, smokier vibe, but just as beautiful in my opinion. So I really love this one too. And then we have Soul Blooming. I don't think this one ever came to Ulta, but this is also one of my favorites. I got this one and Dreamy. Those were the first ones that I bought, and it's just out of this world beautiful. So I'm definitely keeping this one. I also have a couple of their Cutie palettes, which really, if I were going to declutter anything, it would probably be these. They're beautiful, but I don't reach for them all that often. A lot of these are a little bit more deep and smoky, like this one, for example. I love this shade Alchemy 2.0. It's a gorgeous duochrome topper, but I feel like I have a lot of shades similar to this, and I never really used these deeper matte shades. So I think I might actually declutter this one. And the nude one, I really enjoyed this one, but they have these latex nude matte shades, which were actually like cream mattes. And over time, they dried out and they have this really kind of funky texture now that's hard to work with. This was another one of them. So I might declutter this just because I think it's too old to use at this point. And then we had the Platinum palette. So this one was kind of like a weird mix too. You had some like 3 cool tones here, and then you had like a warm vintage gold and these other 2 warm shades. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I don't really need it, so I think I'm gonna let this one go. Ulta had a brand called LA Splash. They were another indie brand, and they had this Golden Gatsby palette. And I remember when I first got this, it had such a gorgeous formula. The shimmer shades felt almost like a cream, but these two are feeling a little bit dried out. They're hard to pick up. So I'll probably just let this one go as well. I know when it first launched, everybody went crazy for it, but it's been years and years. Oh, here's my other Ace Beaute palette. There was one in here. This is Classical Paradise. And this is just like, again, kind of a very interesting color story, which is why I kept it. It doesn't really look like any of my other palettes. So I think I'll just continue to hang on to this. It's really pretty to pull out in the fall time, especially. It kind of reminds me of like apple picking and stuff. I don't know why. I also have this teeny tiny little NARS palette. It's a Laguna palette. What is this called? It's the Unwrapped Mini Eyeshadow Palette. So they had a couple different versions. I got the Laguna one. It's okay, but I feel like I don't really need this. It's super small. It's hard to get your fingers into the pans and stuff. So, all right, I'm gonna declutter that as well. And then I have my Makeup Geek palettes. I don't wanna let go of these because I love them. I think their formula was so good. It really makes me sad that they went out of business. The quality was just insanely good. These to me actually feel like the Doll 10 palettes that I love, the Doll Squad ones. Just absolutely gorgeous. And I actually ordered these very shortly before they went out of business in, what was it, 2021 or 2022. So these really aren't that old. As you can see, I haven't used them that much, but I definitely should. I should get use out of them before they go bad. And then this was just a palette of singles that I had put together. So I have some of those as well. And I'm definitely keeping them. So for this drawer, I'm decluttering 5 palettes and keeping 14. All right, so in drawer number 4 is my Huda Beauty palettes, and I also have some palettes from brands where I only have that one palette from them. So it's just kind of like a catch-all sort of a drawer. So first up, this is my one and only Nomad palette that I have. So this is Ghost Town USA. This is the first one from them that I was really, really interested in. And I just think it is so beautiful. I can't wait to try more from this brand because the quality is amazing. I feel like these are the types of shimmer shades that I really love. They're just so soft and metallic. And I love the more muted earthy tones in this color story. The packaging is also amazing. So definitely hanging on to this one. Next up, I have this palette called Life on the High Rise, and this is a brand called Shades by Shan. And I got this at JCPenney Beauty. They have their own little beauty section now with a bunch of different indie brands and some more well-known brands as well. But I thought that this looked really pretty. It's gorgeous rosy tones, and I just love colors like that. And I was very impressed by the formula. I thought it was so good. Really, really easy to work with. I remember doing a look with this palette in a video that I did on JCPenney Beauty, and I really was super impressed with everything and how it wore. So I'm definitely going to keep this one. I feel like I need to take it out and play with it some more. I also have my one and only MAC palette, and I showed this in a video recently. I got it like last month, I think, and this is called the Embedded in Burgundy palette, and it's part of their Connect in Color line, so they have a bunch of different versions. So I was just, again, drawn to the rosy undertones in here, and I created such a soft and beautiful look with this palette. I was really impressed. But these shimmer shades are definitely more on the satin side. There's no glitter. So if you don't like something really sparkly, really glittery, you might want to check these out. I felt like the formula was so good. I also have one Dior eyeshadow palette, and this one is their 5 colors in the shade Tutu. So again, very, very cool toned. I thought the formula was okay. I don't think it's anything super special, but it's definitely nice and soft. And while I think this is a bit overpriced for only getting 5 shades, the performance is decent. So I think I'm going to hang on to this one for now. I also recently got one of these YSL clutch palettes, and this is shade 100. I believe the name of it is Stora Dolls. I've only worn this once, but I just got it like 2 weeks ago, so I'm definitely going to keep on using it. I felt like, again, formula was really nice. I've never tried a YSL eyeshadow, but I thought that the mattes had this really soft and creamy feel, and this shimmer shade also, while it did have little micro glitters, it really made an impact. It wasn't like a topper. It definitely had a color base behind it, so I really like this one. I think it's such a cute palette. I also have this quad from Thrive Cosmetics. This is their Focus Eyeshadow Palette number 1. This is one I don't even know if I've talked about on my channel. I got it a long time ago, but I thought the formula was nice. I kind of wish they would come out with more color stories because I just felt like, I don't know, what they have on their website is kind of boring. This is really just basic neutrals. It has the gold shimmer shade for the lid, but otherwise, I mean, it's just okay. I keep it because it's my only Thrive palette and the formula is definitely high quality. So I guess, I don't know, I'll hang on to it right now. Then when it comes to my Huda Beauty palettes, I did declutter these not that long ago, so I'm probably not gonna declutter too much from here, if anything. So let's start with her bigger palettes first. Pretty Grunge is the newest of them, and to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed with this one because all of the promo photos made it look very cool toned. but it's a lot warmer. When you see it swatched out, I do have a video on this, and I felt like even some of the shades that look like they're cooler toned end up just applying really warm, at least on me. Now, that's not to say that this isn't a good palette. I definitely think it is. The quality is there, but at the same time, I guess I was slightly disappointed because it wasn't exactly what I was thinking it was going to be, but I mean, it is still really pretty. It's a little bit more on the smoky side too, so if you don't wear a lot of smoky eye looks, then you may not love this one. Next up, we have what's probably my favorite of all of her palettes, the Naughty Nudes. This one has these really pretty rosy shades, and I love every look I get with this palette. It's for sure my most used out of all of them. I'm about to hit pan on this shade, this shade. This one's getting kind of low now. I think these colors really make my blue eyes pop, and also the pinky undertone just goes really well with my skin color. So I'm gonna definitely keep this one. Rose Gold Remastered is another huge favorite. This one, the formula was outstanding. I can't believe this has been discontinued because these shimmer shades, they're like liquid metal on your eyes. Like, they don't have glitter, but they're just such a foiled shimmer without even trying. You pick it up just lightly and it's like so much pigment. It had an outstanding formula that I really wish Huda would go back to because I just love it. So I'm definitely keeping this one. Moving on, we have Desert Dusk, which is an oldie but a goodie. And this one's not available anymore either, but I keep it because it's such a nostalgic palette. I remember this one coming out. I think Rose Gold was her first big palette, and then this was the second one. And there was so much hype surrounding this. I'm honestly not sure that the quality is there anymore because these shades all kind of feel like they're drying out, but this is another one of those palettes that I'm just having a really hard time letting go of. So I'm still gonna keep it. Rose Quartz is another one of my favorite palettes. I love this really soft kind of pastel-y color story, and it's a beautiful spring and summer palette. I love all of the duochrome shades that are in here too. They're just so stunning and really unique. Now, Alter Ego does have a more affordable dupe of this one, and I think that one's really good too. So if you don't want to spend the money on the Rose Quartz palette, or if you're not sure if you'll like this color story and use it, definitely check out the Alter Ego one. And then we have the new Nude palette. This one really, I mean, I haven't used in a while. I used to love this palette. I think one of the issues I have with it is that she had some of these more cream shades and they've just completely dried out because this is so many years old now. So I feel like a lot of the shimmers in this palette I can't use. These were pressed glitters, which I definitely don't use very often. So really what I'm left with is the mattes and maybe like this shimmer right here. The rest of them just kind of dried out. So I do like having this in my collection because every once in a while I use it for comparisons. A lot of palettes come out that kind of look like this and people want to know, are they similar or not? It might be worth me picking up a new version of this if they still sell it. I'm just not sure if they do. So I'm going to hang on to the one I have for now. I may just repurchase it again if they still have it, and then I'll just declutter this one because really I can't use it the way that it is. Mercury Retrograde is another one that's been discontinued, but it's another palette that I really love. I think this color story is beautiful, so I'm keeping this one for sure. And then we have all of her mini palettes. So I did declutter a bunch of them. I had some of her older Obsessions palettes. The only one that I kept from the older line is the Smoky Obsessions because, again, I loved the tones that were in here. It's just a really good neutral palette. So I guess I'm still going to hold on to this one. Next up, we have the Love Fest palette, which I think came out around Valentine's Day. Was it last year? It's pretty new. This one isn't my favorite, to be honest with you. I might declutter this one. I rarely ever use it, and I'm just not a huge fan of the color story. I feel like these oranges are a little bit brighter than I would normally wear. So yeah, I think I'm gonna put this in the declutter pile. Next up, she had this collection of brown palettes. So we had toffee, caramel, and chocolate. So let's take a look. I may actually declutter these. I haven't thought about these in a really long time. So the chocolate one was kind of like these warm, rich brown tones. And then toffee, I think, was more like yellowy browns. Yeah. So that one looked like that. And then caramel was more orangey tones. So yeah, I mean, the more I look at these, the more I feel like I'm probably not going to use them. My favorite would probably be the toffee one, but the more yellowy undertone I have in the new Natasha Denona Yucca palette and a few others. So I think I'm going to declutter these three. I also have this Matte Obsessions palette that I really love. These are tones that I definitely gravitate toward. So while I haven't used this too much, I got it pretty recently. So I'm going to hold on to this one. The light nude palette is also a huge favorite of mine. These are, again, my colors. I really love them a lot. I did get rid of the medium and the deep versions of this during my last declutter because while they were really pretty, I felt like this is the one that I was always reaching for. So it just made the most sense to keep this one. And then these last two I remember keeping just because I really thought the color stories were a little bit more unique. I love this khaki one because these are the types of greens that I like. I'm not crazy about brighter greens, but anything more olive or khaki, I'm all about it. And I felt like they paired really well with these pinks. It was just a nice color combination. So I'm gonna keep this one. And then we have the Wild Tiger palette. I don't really see myself keeping this one. I feel like, again, it kind of has those yellowy tones that I have in the Natasha Denona Yucca palette and also the Profusion Harvest palette, and you'll see both of those later in the video. So I'm gonna say I'll probably declutter this one as well. All right, so final count for this drawer, I'm decluttering 5 palettes and I'm keeping 17. All right, drawer number 5 is my Urban Decay palettes and Persona. So it's mostly Urban Decay. This is the only Persona palette I believe I still own. So this is the original Identity palette. One of my favorite palettes, again, in my entire collection. I love these shimmer shades. The formula is fantastic. They have that really soft and buttery metallic feel without the glitter. And it's just a really soft, easy, neutral palette. So I'm definitely hanging on to this one. Then when it comes to Urban Decay, even though they're not one of my favorite brands anymore, I keep so many of these just for nostalgia purposes and also because a lot of times people want to know, like, if a palette comes out, how does it compare to the original Naked palette or, you know, the Naked Honey, for example. So I like to keep these two just for comparison. So first up, we have the original Naked palette, the one that I wish was never discontinued because I really think this was one of the most perfect neutral palettes to ever come out. Some of my favorite shades in this palette were Toasted. It was just like that perfect taupey shade with a little bit of a pink undertone. I loved the shade Sin as well. This was gorgeous, like in the inner corner. So I'm absolutely keeping this one. And then we have Naked 2. Naked 2 was actually the first one that I purchased, and then I went back and got the original. So when the original one came out, I could not afford a high-end palette. There was no way. But a few years later, I did splurge on this one because I loved the gray tones that were in here. This one just kind of spoke to me more, and then I loved the formula so much I got the original one like another year later. My favorite shade in this was probably YDK. This one is also just a beautiful taupey silver, and it has a little bit of that pink undertone again. It's just so pretty. And surprisingly, as old as this palette is, it still swatches so nicely and it's not dried out at all. So I feel like it closes up really tight. Maybe that's why. But anyway, those are the 2 original Naked palettes. Then we have the Naked 3. So let's just go in order. The Naked 3 palette had those really beautiful rosy tones, and I loved this one too. I mean, all 3 of them I think were just iconic palettes, just everyday, really good staple palettes. So of course, I'm going to hang on to this one as well. I believe next was Naked Reloaded. I'm not positive on the order of these now, or maybe it was Naked Cherry, but anyway, Naked Reloaded. This one I actually never wore. I got this on sale not that long ago. It was like a 50% off kind of thing, and I just bought it to have it in my collection, and I kind of forgot that I had it. But this one doesn't really appeal to me as much as the others, and I think it's because it's kind of like a mishmash of different tones that I don't feel like go together that well. For example, you have like this yellowy gold here, but then you have this pink that's almost like a salmon pink, and then you have these warmer browns, and then you have these cooler tone shades right here, and then you have these warmer ones again. I don't know, it's just kind of strange, at least to me. Maybe if I start using it, it'll make sense, but I guess I'll keep it for now. Also, the Naked Cherry palette had a lot of pink tones in it. This one was not my favorite, But again, I keep it because I do use it for comparisons once in a while. So plus I just collect these palettes. I feel like I have them all, so you know, I might as well just hang on to them. Then the Naked Honey palette was, I would say, another favorite of mine. At the time, these tones really weren't around very much. A lot of people weren't doing these. Now, again, we've seen the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, which I think might be kind of similar to this. I can't believe I didn't even think of this palette when I was doing comparisons for that one. I really wonder how similar they are, but I did like this one. I thought this was a nice palette, so keeping this one as well. Then we have the Naked Wild West. I feel like at this point they were kind of getting away from the naked tones and they were starting to make them a little bit more colorful. The one that I don't have is that new metal one that they came out with, like the heavy metal one. And that one also has some pops of color. So I feel like both of these kind of don't fit in with the whole naked theme, but at the same time, how many naked palettes can you make? There are only so many neutrals. So I think they're trying to spice it up a little bit, but I kind of feel like just put it under a different name then. Don't call them a naked palette. I don't know. But either way, again, I'm just hanging on to all my naked palettes, so that's going to stay. Then we have Born to Run. This was actually the last time I feel like Urban Decay came out with a really great palette. This one was unique. It wasn't a naked palette. It had a lot of color, but at the same time, it's wearable. I thought the formula was really good. Again, the shimmer shades were just so soft and buttery. The matte shades also, I felt like were really good quality. So this was a nice palette for sure. I think I'm going to hang on to this as well. They also came out with these minis not too long ago, so this isn't very old, but this is the Naked Sin palette. And I believe they sent this to me in PR a while back, and I did like the tones in here, but I may actually declutter this one. And the reason for that is because I just felt like it was very shimmer heavy. Like you had these 3 shimmers. This shade was kind of a crease color, but it's a little bit too light. And then you had this kind of mid-tone brown over here, but it didn't have a really deep shade. It had this bright kind of stark white, which I don't love. Like for a brow bone, I usually like something that's more ivory. So I may actually declutter this one. Out of all of these, I think this is probably the one that I'm going to let go of. And then this last palette, if you're a regular viewer of my channel, you've heard me tell the story before behind this palette. And sometimes I'm like, do I tell the story? Do I not? Because I've basically said it in every single eyeshadow palette declutter that I've ever done. And by the way, I'm keeping this. I'm not decluttering it. But this was a palette that I got from my husband. When we were dating, I had a blog called the Budget Beauty Blog, and it was all focused on drugstore makeup because I could not afford anything high-end. It was a time in my life when I was really, really struggling. And I remember we were at the mall, we walked into Sephora, and he was like, is there anything in here that you're going to review on your blog? And I was like, no, I don't really review stuff from this store because it's just too expensive. And then he was like, well, is there anything in here that's like a really like hot new product that people might be interested in? And I saw this Vice palette from Urban Decay, and I said, well, yeah, probably this palette, like everybody was talking about it. And he was like, well, I want to buy it for you because you should talk about the latest and greatest thing. It'll help your blog to grow and all of that. So he got it for me. And I thought that was so, so sweet that he was really supportive of my blog and what I was doing. Even though he couldn't care less about makeup, he was just really showing an interest, which I thought was so nice. At the time, I felt like it was very colorful. Looking at it now, I don't feel like it's super bright. I mean, maybe these few colors over here, but for the most part, it's really not that colorful. But anyway, I keep it just as a reminder of how supportive he's always been of me and everything that I do. So in total, I am decluttering 1 palette and I'm keeping 9. All right, so drawer number 6, I have my Moira palettes, and this one I think I'm definitely gonna have to do something about because one thing that I don't love about Moira's palettes is how thick and chunky they are. They're really hard to store. So I'm thinking I might actually move these over to my baskets that were on the other side of the room because those are deeper, and I think that they'll just fit these a little bit better than these drawers, which are too narrow. I can only really fit 2 of these deep in this drawer, otherwise it doesn't close. So I had it kind of hanging open for a long time. So once we go through these, I'm gonna just empty them out of this drawer and put them on the other side. So let's just go through these palettes really quickly. I'm keeping all of them because I love my Moira palettes. Most of them are not very old at all. It's a really awesome formula at an affordable price point, and if I can find dupes among these as well, like as new palettes come out, even better. So we'll start out with the two newest ones. We had Makeup Mania and Beauty Adventure. So both of these had a board game theme. They were so cute. The colors were basically like that of what you see in board games. So this one had more of a pastel vibe. And if you haven't tried Moira's formula, it's amazing. They are just so good. They're under $20. Usually they're around $18.50. And I also have a 15% off coupon code with them as well. It's Gen15. So if you're interested in any of these, definitely use my code and you can save a bit of money as well. So that one was Beauty Adventure. Then we had Makeup Mania, which had more pinks and purples, and this one is so pretty as well. Both of these definitely had a little bit of color, but they're also just so soft and pretty. Next, we have the Love Letter series. These were some of my favorites. So A Moment With You had, it was a little bit more neutral. So this one had the beautiful green, these rosy shades over here. This shade I loved, With You. It was so beautiful on the lids. So this one is definitely a favorite. And then also I'm Falling For You is probably one of, if not my most favorite palette from them. I mean, just look at how beautiful this is if you like pinks and purples. And some of these shades had a bit of a duochrome shift. Just gorgeous. So definitely keeping this. They also had the Moira Land series, so this was kind of like a carnival or boardwalk theme. So Magic Dreaming was another one that I really loved. I thought this was so gorgeous. It had some pastels, but also some richer shades. I loved this one, All Mine and Dreamland. These two on my lid is just, oh my gosh, so stunning. So this is another really good one. And then Fun Is in the Air was a little bit more of like a brighter neon palette. So this isn't really one that I wear often, but again, I'll just hang on to it in case any neon palettes come out from high-end brands, and maybe I could use this one as like an alternative to that or a dupe. So let's see what else. Oh yeah, they also had the Celestial series. So the Celestial series had 4 different palettes in it. So we had Endless Moonlight, which was more of the cooler tones. It did have a couple of warm shades in there as well, but a lot of it, especially this bottom row and over here, was a little bit more cool. So this is definitely one of my favorites. Time to Shine was another really beautiful one because it had those gorgeous, more muted green tones. And it also had a lot of neutrals as well. So if you like greens, I think this is a really, really pretty one. Chasing Eternity had basically all warmer shades, but I liked that it didn't have a lot of orange. I mean, it does have a copper and it has some of those warm browns. And I think those types of shades definitely make my blue eyes pop a little bit more. So this is a really nice one too. And then the last one in this series was Celestial Love. So this had these really beautiful soft pink shades. So overall, these are some of my favorite palettes. Like I said, they're just a little bit chunky, which I don't love. There's skinnier ones that they have are their older formulas, and they're hit or miss. Some of them are really good, some of them not so great. So first up, we have Among the Stars, and this one is just like your classic neutral 16 pan palette. But I have to say, this did have a really good formula. These shades are so creamy, like they're just really, really smooth and super foiled. I mean, look at that. Like I hardly put my finger in the pans and they're just like jumping out at you. So I'm definitely going to keep this one, even though it's not like the most interesting palette. I think it's a really good formula. Also, we have Go Fly Travel. So this one I actually really liked as well. It's a nice mix of warm and cool shades, and then you have this pop of green over here. The Glow and Gleam palette is, I believe, the first palette I ever got from Moira, and this one had this really pretty butterfly design, and I felt like the formula was okay with this one, but it wasn't the greatest. I felt like the shimmers kind of got hard pan a little bit, and I also didn't like how small the pan sizes were, but I think the color story is beautiful, so I think I'll still hang on to it. Then we had their Daybook series. So they had a whole bunch of these like in the range. I just got one of them. So this one had more rosy shades in it, and I thought it was pretty. It wasn't anything super special, but like I said, I'm just keeping all of my Moira palettes for now because they're not that old. So anyway, moving on, I have a couple of palettes from the Balm. So I did declutter these not too long ago, and I got rid of most of what I had, but I did keep these few, especially the Meet Matte palettes. I think these are the two that I think I'll probably hang on to. So we have Meet Matte Trimony, which is just an all matte palette. And again, it's just a classic. It's really nostalgic for me. So I want to keep it just for that reason alone. Once upon a time, this had an amazing formula. I don't know if it still does because it's so old. I mean, it still feels really nice and soft. It's not scratchy, so it might be okay. But I'm definitely going to keep it. And then Meat Matte Nude. Actually, this one was the original, and I think this one came out next. So this one was my favorite. I really loved the tones that are in here. You have some really, really pretty cool shades and then just a few warms as well. So I think I'm gonna hang on to this too. These alternative rock palettes, I really was kind of torn on. The last time I did a declutter, I wasn't sure if I should get rid of them or not. These were face palettes. So volume 1 had 6 rosy toned eyeshadows and then a blush bronzer highlighter down here on the bottom. And then volume 2, I believe, was more warm toned. Yeah, so that's what that one looked like. I really, really like these, but I never reach for them. I don't know. I kind of feel like I should declutter these at this point because I told myself I was going to use them last time I did a declutter and I just never did. So I think it's time. All right, we have to declutter something from this drawer. So I'm going to declutter these two. We're keeping those. So all told, we're keeping 16 from this drawer, decluttering 2. And also I went ahead and just put my Moira palettes in this bin and they fit so much better. And I still have half of it to put something else. So I'm so happy. I just think they fit a lot better in here. All right, guys. So drawer number 7, this kind of starts my drugstore drawers. So the next several are going to have mostly drugstore palettes. So in here I have some palettes from Joah. I have my NYX palettes and a few other brands. So let's start with Joah first. So these are very recent. I got these at CVS, I would say maybe like 6 months ago. They had released a few of these palettes. So these are called the Color Haul. And this one was called Get Rich Quick. It actually looks very similar to the Urban Decay Naked Honey. I also wonder how this compares to the Yucca palette from Natasha Denona. Again, when I was doing the comparison video for that one, I didn't really think about this palette, but it has those yellowy browns, so it could be kind of similar. And I thought the formula on these was pretty good. I haven't used them a ton. I keep meaning to take these out and play with them some more. So this one's called Smoke Show. And it has a little bit more smoky type shades. So, I mean, you know, the shimmer shades have a nice bit of creaminess to them. They're really nicely pigmented. And then this one's called First Dance, and it has these really beautiful cool tones. So I think this one is probably my favorite. The only shade I wasn't crazy about was this one. This is kind of like those Huda Beauty ones. It has that weird sort of texture to it. But anyway, those are their larger palettes. And then they also have some quads. So I have the simplified quads. This one is Gold Getter. So this one has really rich, warm coppery shades. Then this one's called Taupe for the Best. And it's a lot more neutral, just your basic browns for the most part. And then this one, I felt like this one was really pretty. This was Your Mauve, and it has these beautiful purples. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just hang on to all of these palettes because I really, like I said, I just got them about 6 months ago. So I need to kind of play with those a little bit more. I also have some palettes from Makeup Academy. So this is a brand out of the UK, I believe. I ordered these from their website again sometime last year. And I was absolutely blown away by this formula. It's incredible, especially for a drugstore. I mean, look at this. Like you hardly have to touch the pan and they're just the most pigmented shadows ever. They have a beautiful gleam to them. Oh, just amazing. And they were really, really affordable as well. So this was the Illusionist palette. And then we also have the Soft Nudes. This is another really, really pretty one, but they have so many different palettes on their website. These were the larger ones, and then they also have some little 5 pans that remind me of the Natasha Denona minis. So this one is Andromeda Skies. It looks like kind of a smaller version of the Illusionist, like a little bit of a pared down version of it. And then next we have Enchantment. This one is super beautiful as well. It was so hard to choose when I was on their website. They have so many beautiful colors. Then Wilderness had greens, which I thought were really nice. And then Desert Bloom had really pretty rosy shades. So I really need to take these out and use them some more. I do have a video on these and I tested them out and everything. So if you're interested, just search for, you know, Jen Phelps and Makeup Academy and that should come up. But I'm definitely going to keep all of those. Next up, I have some NYX palettes. So I have their Ultimate Utopia. This is a huge palette. I used to use this a lot. I haven't used it in a while now, but I believe they still sell it. And honestly, I mean, it just has every shade you could want. It has a few pops of color, but it also has just your basic neutrals. And I think the formula is definitely decent. The shimmer shades pick up nicely. The matte shades, while they're not the most soft in the world, I feel like they also are just like really pigmented. Look at that. So I'm gonna keep this one as well. I also have some of their new Ultimate palettes. So we have Vintage Jean Baby, Paradise Shock, and then the holiday one. I felt like these two were a pretty good formula. At first, I wasn't wowed by them because I felt like they swatched a little bit pale, like they weren't as pigmented as I was expecting. But once I put these on my eyes, I thought they performed really well, and they also are long lasting. They basically held up the entire day, and I wasn't expecting that. So I actually think this new formula is really good, with the exception of this one. For some reason, I felt like the Flamingo one just wasn't the same type of quality, and I find that just across the board with holiday releases and limited editions, but I felt like they were okay. Some of the shimmer shades just felt really hard pressed. Maybe they're supposed to be toppers, I don't know, but I guess I'll just keep it for now because it's really new. I just got it. I also have a couple of these older palettes from Joah, which I think I'm going to declutter because I wasn't crazy about this older formula. I like the new one a lot more, and this one isn't even available anymore. I haven't seen these in stores in a while. So this one was the Amazonian palette. This one was really pretty, Lavender Fields. I like the color story. I just didn't feel like it performed very well. And this one was Nudist Colony. So those are going in the declutter. I also have two palettes from LA Colors that are surprisingly good. I got these at Dollar General. I want to say they were $8. So we have Invite Only and Socialite. Invite Only is a cooler toned palette. So this reminds me a little bit of the original Naked palette, kind of mixed with the Naked too. But when I tell you these are like the most incredible formula for an $8 palette, I was not expecting just this level of pigmentation. They are gorgeous, like really foiled metallic shimmers. They're so creamy. I just was honestly blown away. The only problem I have with this palette is that it doesn't have a lot of mattes. It has a lot of shimmers and just a few matte shades, which I can totally make it work. But I would have liked to see a couple more, maybe mid-tone to deeper matte shades. Still, it's a really, really nice one, so I'm gonna keep this. And then the Socialite palette is also part of the same range. This one is a lot more warm toned, and it has these really pretty rosy shades as well. This one also is just super heavy on the shimmers, so I find that it lacks deeper matte shades. These are all kind of mid-tones, and then you have some lighter ones over here. So I would have preferred that, but for an $8 palette that has this kind of formula, I'm not going to complain. So I'm going to keep this one as well. Next up, I have a Jason Wu palette, which is from Target, and I have this one from 3CE. And this one is a Korean brand. This one is, where was this made actually? It might be made in Korea. No, this one's made in China. And I just felt like the Jason Wu palettes were kind of copying these a little bit. They have a really similar formula. The packaging looks almost identical, and even the color stories that they come in look really close as well. And I thought both of these were pretty decent options. So this one was Plot Twist, and I loved these neutral shades that almost have like an olivey sort of undertone. I thought they were really pretty and kind of unique. So I may still hang on to this one. Also, the Jason Wu palette had a pretty good formula too. I wasn't super wowed by it, but every once in a while I do talk about this brand on my channel, so I may just hold on to this for the time being. I also have another K-Beauty palette from a brand called Clio. So they have amazing eyeliners. I love their liquid eyeliners. They're so good. I wasn't the most impressed with this formula, but again, I think because in K-Beauty, a lot of shimmer shades are just these toppers, which we're seeing more and more in palettes here in the US now as well. And I often find that Korean brands are usually ahead of the game. I've had this palette for years, and now that I look at it, it's reminding me of a lot of things that are coming out here. So it is a really pretty palette. Occasionally I like to talk about Korean makeup as well, so I think I'm gonna just keep this one as well. And then I have some palettes from Revlon. So these were two quads that I got. They're their newer formula that they came out with fairly recently. I wanna say they're from last year. This one is Exquisite, which I really love these purples. And then this one is Decadent, which had just basic neutrals. And again, the formula on these was surprisingly good. I was really kind of blown away by how soft they were. They're very pigmented eyeshadows. I mean, look at that. Nobody really talks about Revlon, but I think they have a good formula. So I think I'm going to keep these. And I also have this baked one from Revlon too. This one's called Slight Flex. And this is kind of an interesting formula. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. They have this really beautiful duochrome, which you don't really see in drugstore brands at all. But baked formulas can be a little bit drier feeling, and they're not always super pigmented. But if you wet them, they really come to life and they're incredible. So just as an example, if I put this shade here, like this is what it looks like dry. And then if I just like wet my finger with a little bit of setting spray and go into it again, then it makes all the difference. It's really smooth. It's a little bit more metallic. So I thought this was a pretty interesting color story for the drugstore. And these are all more of a satin finish versus metallic. They're not really super shiny, but I don't know, it's kind of an interesting one. And once in a while I do talk about like surprising products from Revlon, so I think I'll keep this. Then last but not least, I have some palettes from Karity Cosmetics, which I believe they've gone out of business, which is really sad. I was looking at their website and it's like a t-shirt company now. It's not even theirs. And their Instagram page has last been updated, I think in like 2021. So they seem to be gone, but I did find these palettes over on Amazon. There are people still selling them. So if you like anything from here, definitely check Amazon. This palette, I think I'm going to hang on to. This is the Come As You Are palette. And the reason for that is because I was a teenager in the 90s and this just takes me back. It's like the perfect grunge palette. You have these shade names that are so nostalgic, like Oh Snap, Seattle, Cool Beans, Gwen, What's Up. Remember those commercials, the Bud Light commercials? I mean, it's just like such an amazing 90s throwback palette. So I think I'm going to keep this one. It did have a beautiful formula. I thought Karity's palettes were really, really high quality, and I'm sad to see them go. But I think I am going to get rid of the rest of these because I don't feel like they're anything really different than what I already have. This was the nude palette, and I mean, it's a really pretty palette. You have some warm tones mixed with some cool, but I have these colors a million times over. This one was the Nudes and Rudes palette, and this one also, I mean, it's a really beautiful nude palette. I thought the formula was outstanding. It's not as unique as the Come As You Are palette, so I think that's really why I want to keep that one. And then their Picante palette was really warm toned. This was sort of like the 2016 palette in a nutshell. There were so many that came out like this, so this definitely takes me back also, but I think I'm going to declutter this as well. So let me just do a final count. So I'm decluttering 6 palettes, keeping 25. All right, moving on, we have drawer number 8. In this one, I have some Catrice palettes, Flower Beauty. I see some Profusion in here, but I know I have Profusion in other drawers as well. I think these are just their holiday palettes, and this was the only place they fit. So I'm probably going to be decluttering those anyway. So I guess let's check out the Catrice palettes first. So first up, I have these two, Sandy Days and Rainforest Haze, and these I felt like were really stellar formula for Catrice. I was blown away by especially these shimmer shades. They are just the softest, most buttery kind of formula. They definitely felt a bit more high-end. Again, my one reservation with both of these palettes is the lack of matte shades. It kind of makes it hard to complete a look with just the one palette. In this one, you only have these 3 mattes right here. They're all fairly light shades, so I was really hoping for at least something more mid-tone. I can use both of these in my crease, but I like to have something a little bit darker for the outer corner. Normally when I use this palette, I'll use this one because it's a little bit more of a satin versus a shimmer, so I can kind of get away with using this as a matte. So I think I'm definitely going to keep this one. And by the way, Catrice you can find on Amazon now as well as on their website. And then Rainforest Haze was also a beautiful green palette. I really love this one. Some of these shades, especially like Vines and Lush, were some of my favorites. And also Reflection, it's like a gorgeous silver shade. So I'm definitely going to keep this one too. Wow, Self-Made Bae. This one was one of my favorite Catrice palettes ever. I don't believe they make this anymore. And this is so old. I'll probably declutter this one, even though this definitely brings back a lot of memories. This was another one that I bought because of Emily Noel. I remember her talking about these palettes constantly. I think there was another one too that was maybe like more berry toned. But yeah, I thought these were really good palettes, but I think it's time to let this one go. Also from Catrice, we have the Electric Rose palette. This is a pretty new release that came out, I believe, 2023, like earlier in the spring. And I thought this was pretty good. I thought the shimmer shades had a nice amount of pigment. They're the type that I like that aren't super glittery. And then the matte shades were very soft. I made really pretty looks with this little palette, so I'm gonna keep this one. I also have this one from Catrice called Dear Universe. I never really heard many people talking about this one, but I thought it was so beautiful. I just wasn't crazy about the formula. It was okay, but it wasn't as good as these over here that I'm keeping. So I may go ahead and declutter this one, even though I love the color story and I think it's really pretty. Oh my gosh, the Maybelline Blush Nudes. So this one actually isn't that old. I repurchased this because it was having a moment on TikTok and everybody was talking about what an amazing palette this was. And I'm like, am I missing something? I remember using this years and years ago. Why is it all of a sudden making a comeback? Is it really that good? And then when I got it home, I was like, yeah, it's really, I mean, it's okay, but I don't think it's anything special. Like the shades don't really show up very well. Not really the best. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and declutter this one for a second time. All right, moving on, let's go ahead and just declutter some of these Profusion palettes because like I said, these were a holiday release and while the formula was okay, I didn't feel like it was up to their usual standard. I normally love Profusion eyeshadows, but these were just kind of mediocre. So this was the Mary Berry palette. I think these were from last year. They also had these little 9 pans. So we had candy canes. This one also is called candy canes for some reason. It's in different font and it has different colors. I think I actually, now that I'm remembering, I think some of them were a Walgreens exclusive. Some of them were from Walmart. So I think they had 2 different ones. Anyway, all right. Then this one was Sugar Cookies. So that had some warm shades. And then they also had a face palette called Winter Glow. So I'm just gonna go ahead and declutter all of these. I have no idea what this is doing in here. This is Sweet as Apple Pie highlighter. Oh, I think this was also part of that holiday collection. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put this over here as well. And then we had their matcha milk tea palettes. These were actually pretty nice. These were 6 pans and they were surprisingly good. This one was my favorite, the berry milk tea, which might surprise you because I don't normally like red and pink shades. But this, I remember doing a look with this palette and it was so pretty, especially because of this duochrome right here. This, look at that. Oh my gosh. I think I used this dark red like in the outer corner and then I used this pink in my crease and then I put this on my lid and it was just amazing. So I actually really like these. I don't know if they still make them anymore, but that was berry milk tea. This one was the matcha milk tea, and they all had like a really pretty duochrome shade in them. This one wasn't quite as pigmented, but I don't know. I guess I'll just hang on to these for right now. Then we had the Thai milk tea, which was also really pretty. So I love this shade right here. This is, look at that. This one kind of shifts like from pink to orange. All right. That seals the deal. I'm keeping those. Next, we have another Maybelline palette. This is the Nudes of New York. This one I do think is worth keeping. I have no idea why, and if anybody from Maybelline were ever to watch this video, why did you not come out with more palettes in this formula? I don't get it. This one was actually really decent and one of the best formulas they've ever done, but I would have loved to see them do something maybe cool toned or something with like pinks or purples or I don't know, just something other than neutrals. But either way, I thought this was a really nice palette. So maybe they'll still come out with something like this, who knows? Flower Beauty, I have their lights palettes. So these were the 2 that came out this past year, Garden Lights and Coastal Lights. So beautiful. They are all shimmer palettes, so there's no mattes in here, but I feel like these shimmer shades are worth it to just dip into another palette if I need a matte. I mean, they're the most metallic shadows ever. They're buttery. I mean, there's nothing else like this at the drugstore. They're so smooth. The pigment is just out of control. So I'm absolutely keeping these. We have, again, Garden Lights, Coastal Lights, and then these were the 2 originals. Jungle Lights came out first, and then we had Desert Lights. So I think these are definitely worth it. Flower Beauty also had the movie palettes. So these are movies that Drew Barrymore was in. We had E.T. and Charlie's Angels. They haven't come out with another one. I kept expecting them to, but so far they haven't. And it's funny because when I first saw these, I was like, this is the biggest waste of packaging. I hate this. Like, what is going on? And then it was one of you guys who told me, no, it's supposed to be a DVD case. And I'm like, duh, that makes complete sense now. Like, it has all of the, you know, the information on the back. It looks like, you know, for the movie. And then this is where you'd like actually put the DVD in. So now it makes sense. I still don't love it, but now at least I get it. So these were actually a really nice formula too. So I think I'll hang on to these. I don't even know if they still make them, but they're kind of like collector's items. I don't know. The ET one, I did a video where I tried this on, and this one is beautiful. I'd say out of the two, this is my favorite. It had this gorgeous duochrome called Extraterrestrial, which is just stunning. And I really like the cooler tones. So I'm going to keep this as well. Ulta Beauty also has palettes from their like house brand. We have Blushing Blooms, Everyday Faves, and Sunset Skies. And I was really shocked by these too because I feel like Sephora's house brand palettes are not the greatest. And that's kind of what I was expecting with these. But the pigment on these really blew me away. They're so soft. Again, this one was Everyday Fave, so it was just neutrals. Blushing Blooms had the rosy shades, but I mean, when you touch these shimmer shades, they're just so creamy. And like, look at the pigmentation. They're really, really good. The matte shades also have a nice velvety feel. They're very blendable. So I'm going to hang on to these. I think they were really good. Sunset Skies had like a really warm color story. This was probably my least favorite out of the three, but I guess I'll just keep it. I keep meaning to do an Ulta Beauty video, and I mean, I would definitely include these as some favorite products. So, all right, keeping those. Next up is this palette from Pixi. I don't know if she makes this anymore. This is called the Natural Beauty palette. I remember seeing this at Ulta a while ago. I don't know if it's still there, but I loved the cool kind of rosy shades in here, so that's the reason that I kept it, but I don't use it. I mean, if I'm being honest, I never ever reach for this palette. I felt like the formula was okay, but nothing extra special. So I think I might declutter this one as well. And then the last one I have is Essence's Hello Berlin palette. Now I know I have the other Essence travel palettes somewhere, so I'm going to have to reunite this with those as soon as I find them. But let's just look at it really quickly. So this one kind of reminded me a little bit of Subculture, like just a little. It has those same kind of grungy vibes and really muted tones. And I thought the formula on these was pretty good. Essence isn't my absolute favorite eyeshadow formula, but I felt like the mattes were really soft. They had a nice amount of pigmentation, and the shimmer shades were really pretty too. So I'm going to keep this one. All right, so we did a little bit better on this drawer. I am decluttering 9 palettes and keeping 17. All right, let's move on to drawer number 9. So I have more drugstore palettes here, and these are my missing Essence palettes. So I'm not even sure if this is all of them, to be honest with you, but I have the Roma one and London. So these were actually sent to me in PR not that long ago, so I haven't even used them yet. I just kind of put them away for now. But these look really pretty. This is just basic neutrals, but you have your pop of like turquoise and green right here. And I think Essence has a pretty decent formula. It's not my absolute favorite, but I think especially for the price, it's really good. So I'm going to hang on to these. And this is the London one, just quickly, as cooler shades, a lot of gray. It does have these pops of blue and then this bright pop of red orange. So I'm going to keep this one as well. Then when it comes to Catrice and Essence, these are their collabs from The Lion King and The Jungle Book. So these came out, I want to say, last year at some point, and to be completely honest, I wasn't super excited about the formula of these. I felt like most of the shimmer shades kind of got hard pan. You can see it there in the light. It was hard to pick up. It didn't have a lot of pigment behind it. So these were just not the best formula, and I believe they were a limited edition. So I'm going to declutter these because I really wasn't a fan. So this was the Circle of Life eyeshadow palette. Then we had the Jungle Book. This one was Bare Necessities, which I think was kind of neutral shades. I mean, they looked really, really pretty. And not every single shade in the palette was bad, but I don't know, I felt like they were very hard, kind of pressed into the pan and difficult to pick up. So This one I'm going to declutter also. And then we had Stay in the Jungle, which was a bright kind of tropical color story. Again, very pretty. I just wasn't impressed with the formula. So this one's going away. This was a face palette that went along with it. And again, this was not bad, but I kind of wish the blush was a little bit more pigmented. It was just really light. I mean, maybe these were highlighters and then these were bronzers. I'm not sure, but it would have been nice if they had maybe a matte blush in here. But either way, I never really used this one, so I'm gonna put this in the declutter also. Then I have some Wet n Wild palettes. I actually have a lot of Wet n Wild palettes. So these are the Holiday Foxtrot from this past Christmas. And I did show these in a video. I wasn't crazy about them. I felt like the formula was just okay. I was able to get decent looks out of them, but these were part of a rating video that I did on holiday palettes, and these just fell very middle of the road, like a 4 maybe. So I'm thinking I'm probably just gonna go ahead and declutter these. They're not bad, it's just that at this point, you know, I have so many eyeshadow palettes, I really don't need to keep every single thing. So I'm gonna put these in my declutter, and then I also have a bunch of the new Wet n Wild or newer Wet n Wild palettes. So we have the 10 pans. This one is, I had to keep the stickers because they didn't have the names on the back. So this one is Lights Off, which is cool tones. And then this one was Call Me Sunshine. Again, kind of similar to something like the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. And then this one is Nude Awakening. So this is just basic neutral shades. And then this one is Heart and Soul, which is warm and rosy tones. So I have to say this isn't my favorite formula. If I had to pick my favorite Wet n Wild formula, it would be these older palettes. I just felt like these were better. There's something about these, even though they swatch nicely, they don't apply to the eyes as well as I hoped. Like the shimmers are a little bit chunky. You see, like even when you put your finger into it, there's tons of fallout. And when it comes to the matte shades, I think they're pigmented, but then when you go to blend them on your eyes, they're just like very powdery. Like you see how the product just disperses and it's patchy. I don't know, every time I use these, I feel like I just have to keep packing shadow on just to get it to look smooth and even on my eyes. So I know a lot of people love these, and I feel like I'm in the minority because everybody is always talking about these. Like if they do a video on affordable eyeshadow palettes or good things at the drugstore, you know, these always are at the top of everybody's list. But for some reason, I don't know, I just don't love them. I'm still going to keep them though because they're the current Wet n Wild stuff, and I just think that there's not a lot of eyeshadow palettes at the drugstore. So when I'm doing those videos where I'm talking about drugstore makeup, sometimes I refer to this collection. So then we have the 5-pan palette. So this one is Sundays, which is warmer tone shades. Then we have Walking on Eggshells, which is very basic neutrals. I think this was actually a quad at one point in time, like years and years ago. This one is My Lucky Charm, which has some greens in it, as well as a couple of neutral shades. Petalette is a really pretty one. I love these purples and pinks. I mean, really the color stories are very pretty. This is another Walking on Eggshells. I guess I had 2 of them for some reason. I think the other one was unopened, so I might actually declutter that one and give it away to somebody because, yeah, I haven't even touched this one. So that can go to like a shelter or something. So yeah, that's Walking on Eggshells. And then this one is Camo Flaunt. This one has a pressed glitter in the middle, which I wasn't crazy about, but I like the other colors. So those are the new Wet n Wild. Oh wait, there's one more. Go Commando. So this one has some terracotta type shades over here. Then you have like this brown that has a greenish undertone and this green shimmer. It's actually a very pretty one as well. And then when it comes to my old Wet n Wild eyeshadow palettes, I don't get rid of these because, like I said, these are my favorite formula that they ever did. So I have a whole video on these because these were sort of like dupe palettes for higher end. So we have the My Glamour Squad, which is a really close dupe for Soft Glam from Anastasia, and Rosé in the Air was a modern Renaissance dupe. And like I said, I swatched these out next to the originals and they're really, really close. Not in formula, but in color at least. Then we have Nude Awakening, which was really beautiful nude shades. I wasn't sure if this was actually a dupe for anything, but it's just a really pretty neutral palette. Stop Playing Safe. This is a dupe for the Natasha Denona, I think it was the Tropic palette. I could be remembering the name wrong, so I apologize, but I don't have that one yet. This color story looks really, really close to that. VI Purple was very similar to the Natasha Denona Lila palette, or is it Lila? I've heard people say it both ways. I always said Lila, but this is very similar to that. Next up is Cosmic Collision. This was almost a spot-on dupe for the Anastasia Prism palette, which has been long discontinued, but I believe I compared them in that video that I did on these as well, and it was really close. Of course, we have Comfort Zone, and the original Wet n Wild Comfort Zone was one of my favorite palettes. I could have sworn I still had it. I don't know where it is. It might be in a different drawer, but that was the formula that I loved the most. And then this one came next, and then the new one is last. So that's Comfort Zone. And then Not a Basic Peach. This was a dupe, I think, for the Kylie Cosmetics. Like, they had a summer palette, and this one looked really close to that one. So anyway, I thought these were really good. Next up, I have these mini Physicians Formula palettes. So this one was called Butter Believe It, and this one was Matte Manoy. So this one is an all matte palette. This Butter Believe It one, I was pretty surprised at how much I liked it. And it's a pretty close dupe for the Natasha Denona mini palette. I'm trying to think of which one it is now. Off the top of my head, I can't think of it. But the formula really surprised me. I looked at this little palette and I was like, this isn't going to be great. I mean, look at that. It's gorgeous. I don't know if they still make this one. I kind of hope they do, because some of you may want to check it out after this. I don't know. But it's super pretty. And then the matte one, also, it just has these really pretty light dusty shades, although I have to say I wasn't as big a fan of this one, and I may declutter this because it's all too light. Like, look at all these shades. They're super pale, and then you just have these two deeper ones. There's no midtones in this at all. So I think, yeah, I might declutter this, but I'm definitely keeping this one. And just quickly, this is the Natasha Denona one I was talking about. It's the Mini Star palette. So let me just show you guys how close these are. Hold on one second. You have this blue right here. You have this shade that looks similar to this one. You have this rosy tone right here. The green, I think this is a little bit brighter, but still. And then you have this darker brown that looks almost identical to that one. So, I mean, it's really, really similar. I think I swatched them together once in a video and they were really close. The Physicians Formula actually has an additional shade. It has this kind of champagne one. So anyway, just thought I would mention that quickly, but I'm going to keep this one. Oh, I also forgot from Wet n Wild, I have this Color Icon 32 pan eyeshadow palette. I don't know if they still make this one, but it's basically the same exact formula as these ones that I really liked. So I've hung on to this, but again, I don't know if it's still around. I don't know if you can still get it, but I felt like the formula of this was really good. It has the creamy shimmer shades that I love. And I thought the mattes had such better grip to your eyes than the other ones. Like, let me just show you the difference. I had swatched one of the mattes from that other palette that kind of got all patchy right here. So these, I just felt like they gripped the skin a lot better, and it looks so much smoother than this over here, which was like a big patchy mess. I can definitely tell the difference. I don't know. So anyway, I'm going to hang on to this for now because I don't know if they still make it, but it was a really good palette for $15. So if it's still around, it's probably something that I would want to recommend again at some point. So, all right, I'm going to keep this over here. Moving on, we have the Viva La Musical palette from JCat Beauty. This is one I'm pretty sure is no longer available. I haven't seen it on the Ulta website in a long time, and I thought it was okay. Again, formula-wise, it felt pretty decent, but it's just not one that I ever really reach for. I do think the color story is really pretty, but do I need to keep it? Probably not. So I think I'm going to declutter this one. This L'Oreal palette is one that I got from Look Fantastic, which I actually heard is just going out of business. But Look Fantastic has a lot of drugstore makeup from the UK that we never get here. And this is one that unfortunately never came to the United States, but it's a really nice formula. It's better than anything we have here from L'Oreal. So I was really disappointed that it never surfaced in the US, but It feels almost like baked powders. I don't know if that's the case, but the shimmers felt really nice. The mattes had a really beautiful quality to them. But again, this is something that I really didn't reach for very often. And it's also not something that I regularly recommend on my channel because I'm not even sure that this is still around. But even if it was, you know, most of my viewers are in the US, and if we can't really get it here, most people aren't interested. So I think I'm probably going to declutter it. Next up from Rimmel, I have their Magnifies Jewel Rocks edition. This was my favorite of this series. I did have all of these palettes at one point in time, and I decluttered them all in, I don't know, last year or whenever the last time I did a declutter was. I'm not as crazy about the formula as I once was, and I think my biggest issue with these is that they're not long lasting on the eyes. Initially, when I first apply them, they look good, and then over time, they just fade really fast. So I'm kind of torn because I feel like this is such a unique color story, especially for the drugstore. And if I use a primer, I can kind of get it to last a bit longer. So I might still keep this one for right now. I mean, it's not a bad palette, like I said. I think it just lacks a little bit of the longevity, but it's like a $7 palette. So anyway, then we have the last few, and these are from Hard Candy. So these are their monochrome shadows. And I actually really love these. These are a great formula, and they're so inexpensive. They're kind of like the e.l.f. bite-sized palettes, but I like some of the color combinations in these even a little bit better. So this one, oh, does it say on the front? This one's Burn. Duh, it actually says it right in the powder. I feel really dumb now. Yeah, it says Burn right there. So these I was pleasantly surprised by. They have a nice formula, like I said. They're very soft, easy to work with. So this one's Burn. This one is Purr. So this had a beautiful, cool toned, kind of purpley color story. I really like this one a lot. And then Bare is just your basic neutrals. So that's a really pretty one too. And then we had Envy, which is the green one. So I'm definitely going to hang on to these. I think these are a great little affordable under $5 option. So, all right, let me just do a final count and then we'll move on to the next drawer. All right, so I am keeping 25 palettes and decluttering 10, and I'm going to take these Essence ones and move them into the last drawer where I had the other Essence palette, just so that they're all together. And I made a ton of space in this drawer, so I should be able to kind of add some things back in when I need to. So this is really good. All right, guys, so here's drawer number 10. We're moving right along, and right away I see some Essence and Catrice, which were in the previous two drawers, so I'm gonna probably have to move these over, but that's good because I made room. So I guess we'll just start with those. First up, we have the Essence Out in the Wild palette. I really don't remember this one all that well. I guess it was kind of like an earthy theme. I don't believe that they make this one anymore. I could double check, but I don't think so. So I'm probably just gonna go ahead and declutter this. It's several years old, and as you can see, I didn't really use it all that much. So let's put this one in the declutter pile. When it comes to their little 6 pans though, I'm definitely keeping all of these. I think they're a great formula, and I almost prefer these to the e.l.f. bite-size palettes because they have 6 shades. I just find these to be a little bit easier when it comes to creating looks with them, because sometimes the e.l.f. palettes are missing like a mid-tone shadow, or they might be missing a deep dark one. So this, I feel like these kind of have it all. So this is the Taupe It Up one. And then next is I Like to Mauve It, Mauve It. I hate reading the titles of these because then I always get these songs stuck in my head, and I really don't want this one stuck in my head. So this one is really beautiful. And then we have Dancing Green. So this one is one of my favorites. I love the greens in here. I think they're just like really earthy and pretty and not too bright. So this is a good one. And by the way, their formula is really nice. Like I said, it's soft. It has a nice amount of pigmentation. So I really enjoy these. And then we have Nothing Compares to Nude. So this is a really beautiful nude palette. My Rose Will Go On is another one that I really like a lot. I love these tones. They're so pretty. Coral Me Maybe. This is one of my most used, I think. Even though it's more on the warm tone side, I just love these soft peachy colors. I think they really make my eyes pop. So this is a good one. Ice Ice Baby. This is probably my least used one with the blues, because I really don't wear blue eyeshadow all that often, but on the off chance that I do, I have this one. And then we have Bronze This Way. This is another really beautiful one. It's just basic neutrals, easy to wear. So I'm going to keep all of these. Then we have the Catrice 5 in a box palettes, which again, similar to the Natasha Denona mini palettes. So this one is soft rose look. And this one I think is absolutely beautiful. I don't even know if Catrice still makes these. Do they? I feel like I haven't seen them on Amazon in a while. I'll have to check their website and see if they're still there. But these are really nice formula too. So this one is a golden nude look. This was another really pretty one. It kind of reminds me of the nude one from Natasha Denona. Warm spice look, had warmer shades. And then Modern Smoky had your really pretty cool tones. So I'm going to hang on to these for now. Like I said, I'm going to investigate and see if they're still available. Essence also had some Disney Princess palettes, and these were so nice. I really liked these, but I think they sold out super fast and it was impossible to get them. But I thought the formula of these was fantastic. It was so much better than the Lion King ones that they had come out with this year. I thought these were so good. So the Little Mermaid one, super beautiful. I mean, look at that. It's just intense foiled shimmer shades. I really liked these palettes, but they're discontinued. I feel like I can't talk about them on my channel anymore. And if I'm being honest, like I have these colors in other palettes, so it kind of doesn't make sense for me to keep them. This one was the Sleeping Beauty palette, and this one was probably my favorite. I don't know. I feel like I want to keep this one. Like, how pretty are these colors? The pinks and the purples, like all these really cool tones, and then you have this beautiful cool toned green, which is so unique, and it just seems to really go nicely with these other shades. I don't know. Maybe I'll keep this one because I really like it. And then the Snow White one was kind of like the Ariel one. It was a little bit bland and boring. I feel like they could have done a little bit more with this one, with Snow White, because, you know, it has no red in it at all. It has no yellow. It does have the blue, but otherwise it's just very plain, very boring. So I might actually get rid of this one. Next up, we have Hard Candy palettes, and I'm not even sure that they have these anymore either. These are their Look Pro eyeshadow palettes. I think they have ones in different packaging now. So this one, I actually don't even see a name on it at all, but it kind of reminded me of Huda Beauty's Rose Gold palette. It has a really similar color story, but you know, I didn't think the formula was fantastic. I do like the formula of their newer little palettes, the mini ones, and I haven't tried any of their new larger palettes, but I might have to check those out. This one is called Blushful Nudes, and this really reminded me of Huda Beauty's new nude palette. It even had like the same glitters in the same colors. It had the marbled shades, so this was sort of a copycat for that one, but I think I'm going to declutter this as well. Then this one was called Earthy Vixen, and I mean, it's fine, but it wasn't the best formula. Like I said, it was a little bit dusty, and the shimmer shades were a little crumbly, so I'm going to declutter this one too. Oh, this is another one from Essence. It's called the Daily Dose of Love eyeshadow palette. I kind of remember this one, and I remember being not super impressed with it. I don't like how small the pan sizes are, even though I like the colors. I think they're really pretty, but I might declutter this one. Not to go out of order, sorry. I have two more Hard Candy palettes. So this one was like the hemp version. It was called Smoke Out. They had to make sure they said it was THC and CBD free. That's funny. That's what that one looked like. Again, it had two pressed glitters, and yeah, I don't think they make this one anymore. So I'm gonna declutter that. And then this one was an all matte version of their Look Pro palette. It reminded me a lot of, there was a Viseart palette that was like really popular for a long time, and I think people were comparing that to this, but honestly, Viseart's formula is amazing, and I don't really think there's any comparison personally, but anyway, I'm going to declutter this one too. Then we have e.l.f. So e.l.f. has these larger 18 pan palettes. I don't know if these are still around. Again, I feel like I used to see these at Target all the time. Maybe I'm just not looking for them, but I haven't noticed them in a while. But they might still be on their website. So this is Earth and Ocean, and I did a video on this where I did a couple of looks with this palette, and I still stand by this one. I really, really love it. I think the formula is really great. This Tundra shade, even though it's like kind of crumbly, it's an awesome color changing, shifting shade. It's a topper. And I noticed that if you put it on top of any shade in this palette, it changes it. Like, let me just show you because this is so cool. So let's say we have this shade right here, and these are crumbly and they have fallout. But anyway, if you put Tundra on top of it, it changes it into this gorgeous turquoise shade that's not quite as deep and dark. So let me just swatch it again so you can see the difference. Like, it basically changes it into a completely different color. So it's really cool. It even works with the brown shades. So like, I'll put this brown here, and then I'll put it again, and I'll put Tundra on top of it. And it makes it just like a really cool, interesting color. And it looks like sort of a grayish green. It's really neat. So I thought this palette was awesome. And you know, you have your earthy shades in this 9-pan section right here. Then you have the beautiful water tones. And again, I'm not somebody who wears blue, but other than like this blue in the middle, which I don't really wear, I felt like this one was just very subtle and pretty, like almost a gray blue. This one is more of like a greenish blue. So I felt like it was more wearable than most for me, and I really just enjoyed the formula of this one a lot. Then we have the Opposites Attract palette and also Retro Paradise. I don't know if they still have these. I may just hold on to them just in case. I did have one additional one of these that they had, and had kind of like lighter like dusty mauvey shades and some greens in it, and that one I decluttered because for some strange reason that formula was just not the best. I had a really hard time with it, so I ended up decluttering that one even though I really loved the colors. But these were okay, so I think I'll still keep these. And then from Physicians Formula, we have the Gold Vault. So, oh my gosh, I remember this one. It has a mascara in it, which I'm sure is no good anymore. This reminded me a lot of the Urban Decay Naked Honey again. Same types of shades. I think I even compared them in a video at one point. And these are a baked formula, so they were really kind of interesting, but also very crumbly. As you can see, just tons of fallout. It wasn't the best formula, so I'm gonna put this one in the declutter pile. So really all I have to put back in this drawer are the e.l.f. palettes, because the Catrice and Essence are gonna be going in the other two with the rest of them. So this drawer really got cleaned out. I'm happy about that. So let me just total everything up really quick. All right, so for this drawer, I am decluttering 10 palettes, keeping 16, so not bad. Okay guys, moving on to drawer number 11, I have some of my Milani palettes, and I also have some e.l.f. in here as well, which I think I'm probably going to thin out by the looks of it. So let's just do that really quickly. The first one I have is Electric Mood, and I don't believe that they make this anymore. This was another one of their 18-pan palettes. And this was okay, but I didn't like it quite as much as the Earth and Ocean one and the Opposites Attract and the other ones that I have. So I think I'm going to declutter this one. I really never used it. I also have these little 10-pan palettes, Mad for Matte and then Mad for Matte Summer Breeze. And I don't know if they make these anymore either. I've noticed that they've updated their 10 pans. So this one is a classic. I remember so many people used to talk about this one on YouTube, and I thought it actually had a pretty decent formula. I thought the colors were really nice, but I can't even tell you how many years old this is. I really think it's time to let it go. So I think I'm going to do that. And then they had come out with the Summer Breeze version, which was just different colors. Basically, it was still an all matte palette. This one they came out with after like warm tones really started coming around, and you know, post modern Renaissance palette, a lot of brands started doing these warmer shades, and so this was their version of it. But I think I'm gonna declutter this one as well. Oh, I actually thought, and I mentioned when we talked about e.l.f. that I had decluttered this one. I guess not. It's just in this drawer. But I think I might. I love the color story of this one. I think it's really pretty, but there was something about the formula for me that was just really lacking. I don't know, it just didn't have a lot of pop to it. Everything seemed kind of dusty and powdery, especially compared to the Earth and Ocean. I don't know if that was just a different formula or what was going on, but I like that one so much more than this. So I think I'm going to get rid of this one. I know they do still make it, but I just wasn't crazy about it. We also have the 18 Hit Wonders, which I think they do still make as well. This one was a little bit more on the colorful side. Again, it's one that I really didn't wear very often, but I think the formula on this was good. This was one of the later ones, and I mean, I guess it was hit or miss. This shade isn't picking up very well. This one's kind of amazing. So do I really need it? Probably not. It's a little more colorful than I usually wear. So I think I'm going to declutter this too. And then we have all of my bite-sized palettes, which I'm definitely keeping. So here we have Rose Water, which was really pretty rosy tones. This one is I Love You a Latte, and this is an all matte palette, just basic neutrals. Carnival Candy had some neutrals with a pop of blue. Then we had Acai, which was just blues. Pumpkin Pie was more warm neutrals. Hot Jalapeno had some beautiful green shades. And then Berry Bad had really pretty rosy berry tones. Truffles is probably the one that I use the most other than Rosewater. It has neutrals and I really like this gray on my lid, so I use that one quite a bit. And this is another one I use a lot, Cream and Sugar. It's just, again, basic neutrals. So I'm keeping all of those. And then when it comes to Milani, I have a lot of really old stuff in here, so it's going to be really tough for me to get rid of those because their older palettes are my favorite. The newer ones, not so much. Oh, whoops, I forgot one of these e.l.f. palettes. This one is Orange Dreamsicle. So that's that one. So let's just quickly go through, I guess, the gilded palettes first. These are Milani's newer ones. I'm not sure which ones actually exist still on their website. If they've discontinued any, I'm not sure, but I feel like I'm probably just gonna keep them for now, even though this isn't my favorite formula. This is Gilded Flora, and it's weird because I feel like the shimmer shades in these palettes are really nice. They're very metallic, some of them are duochromes, like they're really pretty, but for me, it's the mattes in these palettes. They just don't hold up on my eyes. They are so powdery, and when I apply them, I find that they really just blend away to nothing. Like if I keep blending, they just sort of disappear, and they don't have the longevity on my eyes that I'm hoping for, especially compared to their older palettes. So for me, I feel like I like the looks that I get with these palettes initially, and then they just don't hold up. I always tell myself one of these days I'm gonna find a primer that's gonna make these last on me, but I haven't so far. So that was Gilded Flora. Then we have Gilded Terra. I mean, the color stories are beautiful. If they would have like a stellar formula, I think Milani would dominate eyeshadow at the drugstore. But I feel like I'm not alone in this. I know a lot of you have told me over the years that you just don't love their new formula compared to the older one. This one is Gilded Nude. I mean, so pretty. I love the cooler shades in here, and then it's mixed with the warm tones. So this one's like a really versatile option. Gilded Gold reminds me a bit of Natasha Denona's gold palette. It has kind of that really similar vibe, and some of these shades like this duochrome are just so beautiful. So there's that one. Gilded Coast had beautiful blues mixed with grays. It's a nice cool tone palette, so I really liked this one too. And then Gilded Twilight was kind of more of a smoky palette. You had these rich purples and grays and really just deeper tones in general, but it's another nice cooler toned one. Gilded Pastel, I would say, is my least favorite of all of these because this formula really just didn't hold up at all. And I felt like these pastel shades, again, they just sort of blended away to nothing, and like you can see it just completely disappear into my skin. So picture trying to blend that on your eyelid and then you have to keep going in and grabbing more. This one I might actually declutter because I never ever use it. Next we have Luster Light, and this one had really beautiful rosy tones. So this was another one I really liked. Then we had these older palettes. These were face palettes, and I'm not sure that they even have these anymore, but these I really felt like they were super messy. The shimmer shades were more on the crumbly side, so I think I may discontinue, or not discontinue, declutter these. So this one, what is this called? Oh, okay, it's on the top. Gilded Violet. So that was that one. Next up is, this one was Gilded Ember. So it had warm tones. And then this one was Gilded Jade. I mean, they were definitely pretty, but I just felt like, again, they were very messy. I wasn't crazy about the formula, so that's those. All right, then next up we have the all-inclusive palette. This is volume 3. So these were face palettes. You had highlighter, bronzer, blush, and another blush, and then 3 eyeshadows. So this is the smokier one, and it's really cool toned. I like this palette. I think it's really pretty. The face colors are beautiful. I do have the warmer version of this too somewhere. It's not in this drawer, so I'm not quite sure where it is, but we may come across it in another drawer. Either way, I'm going to keep this because it's still a current product on their website. Also, Luminoso. This palette was in my worst palettes of 2023. I just felt like this formula, it wasn't even the gilded formula. I don't know what it was. I felt like all of the colors just lacked pigmentation. It felt really dusty. So I think I'm going to declutter this. Even though it's a current product, there's no reason for me to keep it because, again, it's not something that I'm going to recommend on my channel. So I'm going to put that in the declutter. Oh, weird. How did this get in here? The Revlon Slight Flex palette. We just talked about this in a previous drawer. Did I have two of these? That's bizarre. It's open, but it doesn't look like I use this one as much as the other one that I have. Huh, that's weird. I guess I bought it twice. I'm just gonna put this over with the other one. Then I also have two of Milani's 6-pan palettes. So this one is called Money Saving Bestie, and it has these beautiful green tones. And then this one is called What Do We Think? And I like this one the best. This is my favorite. And the formula of these is similar to the Gilded palette. So again, I didn't feel like it was the longest lasting on my eyes, but they do apply and blend really nicely, at least initially. So I'm going to keep those for right now. And then we have the oldies but goodies, the Milani Everyday Eyes palette. So this one was shade number 2, Bare Necessities. And this was the formula of theirs that I just loved. I thought it was so good, but I do think it's time to let these palettes go. I am going to keep these other ones that I really love even more than these, but these I've just had forever and ever, and I'm not even sure that they're good anymore. Like, they may not be okay for me to use. So I'm going to get rid of that one. This one was called Must Have Metallics. So it had some really beautiful metallic shades. This one is the one that I probably use the most. It's Must Have Naturals. So it had the kind of grayish taupey shades that I really like. This one, Smoky Essentials, had like the blues and again, really cool toned. Earthy Elements is the one that everybody talked about. Again, this was like around the time when warm shades were really popular. So this was another big hit for me. I liked this one back in the day. And then there was the all matte version, which was called Basic Mattes. And it was just basic neutral shades. So I'm sad to see these go. There's definitely a bit of history behind these, but like I said, I don't think I'm ever going to use them. After those palettes came these. So these aren't quite as old. I feel like I can probably still use them. My favorite by far was Soft and Sultry, and I think a lot of you will agree that this is one of the most amazing drugstore palettes that was ever available. The formula, there was just something about this. It was so soft, so buttery. It still feels really nice. So the quality is still there. The matte shades really gripped to your eyes. They weren't like these other ones that just blend away. Like you saw before in the Gilded palettes, I would take a matte shade and go like this. And as I was blending, it would disappear. But with this one, I mean, it stays put. Like it really adhered to the skin. These were so long lasting on the eyes. It wasn't patchy. It looks really nice and smooth. This was just such a superior formula for Milani, and I was really sad when they discontinued these. So this was Soft and Sultry, and I want to keep this one because I love it still to this day. Then they had Bold Obsessions. This one wasn't my favorite of the color stories. It was okay, but it was a little bit deeper and smokier, and I just didn't use it quite as often. So I might declutter this one because this one, I don't have as good a memories attached to it. Most Loved Mattes. This was another one that I used quite a bit, but all matte palettes aren't usually my thing. I usually like something with a little bit more shimmer. So I think I'll declutter this one too. And then Pure Passion had really beautiful rosy shades, and this was another huge favorite. So I think I'm going to keep this one because this one and Soft and Sultry were my jam back in the day. So, all right, let's see. I'm going to do a final count. Okay, so I'm going to be decluttering 18 palettes and keeping 22. All right, moving on to drawer number 12. We are 2/3 of the way there. So this is Profusion, and the next drawer is also going to be Profusion. These palettes are so large, they take up a lot of space. So unfortunately, I had to kind of split them up into 2 drawers, but I'm hoping to thin these out a little bit because I have so much. So let's see what I'm going to keep. The first one is the Desert Sage palette, and this one was a surprising one for me. I actually like it more than I thought I would. I don't particularly love the layout, especially some of these shimmer shades, which are like really tiny little pans, but the pigment is pretty insane on a lot of these shadows. They're just beautiful. Profusion is just overall, I think they have a great formula at the drugstore. So, I might actually hang on to this one. As long as they're still carrying it, I think it is a good affordable option. But I would have to say my number one Profusion palettes by far, and those of you who watch my channel regularly know this, the Harvest palette and the Ethereal palette, these two right here, they're $10 palettes and they're incredible. I can't even begin to say how much I use these. I mean, I'm constantly using them. This, I actually did a YouTube short not that long ago comparing this to the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, and I was shocked at how many shades are really, really close. And the formula of this is so good. Some of these are actually cream shadows, and they are so smooth and metallic. They look amazing on the eyes. You have some beautiful duochrome shades like this one. This one, Marigold, is one of my favorites. So I just love the way these look on the eyes, and it's just overall a beautiful, stunning palette. So this one, and then Ethereal is more of like a spring kind of color story. This also has the most incredible cream shadows in it. This one and this one especially. This is probably my favorite shade, Fluorescence. As you can see, I've actually hit pan on it. And this is another one of the cream shadows, but it's just like this gorgeous shifting kind of blue purple shade. It's a little bit more of a topper, but it makes such an impact on the eyes. And the matte shades in these are also just very blendable, yet they grip nicely to the eyelids. It's just such a good palette. I highly recommend these. I don't believe you can get them in store, just on Profusion's website, but it's worth it. This one called Love You So Brunch. I forgot about this one. I think I might actually declutter this. It's pretty old. It's been around for a couple of years now, I think. And it says on the outside that it was a Walmart exclusive. I haven't seen it there in forever, so I think I'll probably let this one go. I also wasn't crazy about these 5-shade palettes, and this is just personal preference, but I'm not a big fan of pressed glitters. And every single one of these had a pressed glitter in the center, which really left me with 4 shades to use instead of 5. I don't mind a pressed glitter if it's going to be in a larger palette like this and I have some more options to play with, but in a 5-shade palette, I want to make sure that I can use every single one. And for me, it's not even that I don't like the way pressed glitters look on the eyes, because I do, but I wear contacts, and whenever I wear glitters, they inevitably get into my eyes, under my contacts, and I just worry about the health of my eyes and getting glitter in there. It's just probably not a good idea for me, so I'm going to declutter these. So this one was Delightful Dahlia. Then we have Terrific Tulip. I do think you can still buy these though, so if anything piques your interest, definitely head to Profusion's website. This one was Pretty Poppy. Then we have Peaceful Peony. This was a really beautiful one, kind of dusty, mauvey shades. This one's Romantic Rose. This is a good Valentine's Day palette. And Honest Hibiscus. This one's really bright, but it's kind of a unique color story, so that one's kind of fun. All right, and then we have some of their really huge palettes. These are 35 shades, and I believe they're all still available, so I think I'm just going to hang on to these. I actually use them to do comparisons with a lot of other palettes when I'm trying to dupe things. I know I've used Festival for a ton of different dupes over the years, and I mean, the formula of these is really, really good. If you've tried these, you know. The shimmers, again, just super pigmented. They have that really nice soft and creamy feel. The mattes also are just really nice and pigmented. They have good grip to the skin, so I definitely would recommend these. They're really affordable. So we have the Festival palette. Paradise is one of my favorites. I love the tones that are in here. I think because it's a largely purple and green palette, and those are the two colors that I think I gravitate toward the most other than neutrals. So this one is definitely a favorite. Then we have some of these smaller 21 shade palettes. I say smaller, they're not really that small, but we have Gold Rush, which again is kind of similar to like the Urban Decay Naked Honey type of palette. So there was that one. Back over to a 35 shade palette. This one is Starlit. This had quite a few pressed glitters, more than I would have liked, but I kept it because I love all of these purple and mauvey tones over here. I think this is a nice, like, kind of half warm tone, half cool tone palette. So if I can kind of just stay away from the glitters, I think this is still a really good one. And I like this row of green in the middle there too. This one's an Eye and Cheek palette, and these, oh my gosh, this is so old. I actually remember doing an unboxing when Profusion sent me PR at the very, very beginning of my channel, like the end of 2017. I did a Profusion video, and I'm pretty sure this was in that video. Don't ask me how I remember that, but the video was horrible. If you end up looking it up, I started filming the video during the daytime. I didn't have professional lights. I was just using light from the window, and I was sitting in my kitchen opening up all of these Profusion palettes, and then I had to leave and go get my son from school, and I was busy with him, and when I finally sat back down to film the rest of the video, it was dark, and the lighting was absolutely horrible. I look at that video every once in a while, I see it, and it makes me cringe, but anyway, I think I'm probably going to declutter this one because, like I said, it's super old. I don't think they even have these anymore. So that's one at least that I can get rid of. Next, we have the Sultry palette. This is a 24 shade palette. This is also one of their really, really old ones. I don't know if I should keep this. I think this was another one from that video that I had unboxed. And yeah, it's looking a little bit crusty. I know they do still make this one, but if anything, I would probably just pick up a new one. If I really feel like I miss it and I want to have it again, I'll just get a newer one because this one, I think it's just too old. So I'm going to put this over here. Then we have Siennas. This was a 21 shade palette, and this one had really, really warm tones. So I'm probably going to just keep this as well. Like I said, I want to keep most of these if I can. Nude Bliss is another 21 shade palette, and I really like these colors too. It has a lot of neutrals, but also those rosier shades and the purples down here. So I'm gonna keep that. And then Love Struck. This one actually reminds me a bit of the Natasha Denona Love palette. So it has these gorgeous pinks and purples, and this even has some duochromes, which again, for the drugstore, it's not really something that you see a lot of. So this one was a duochrome also. These two were just so beautiful. This one down here, I think, was as well. Yeah, I love these colors. I feel like I really want to take this one out and play with it again because it's been a while, but I'm loving these colors. I really feel like I need to start a video series where I just take out like a really old palette and use it again. I just don't know if anybody will watch it because I feel like Shop My Stash videos are not popular anymore. So next we have these little 10 shade palettes. These are around $6. They're super affordable and they come in beautiful colors. So we have the Emeralds palette. Again, the formula is fantastic, so nice. And the matte shades as well. They're so soft. I almost feel like these little ones have a better formula than the bigger ones. They're just amazing for an under $10 palette. So Emeralds, then we have the Classics. This one is also really pretty. I feel like this one's getting kind of old. I might need a new one because a lot of these shades are getting hard pan. I'm pretty sure this was the first one I ever purchased. So it's very, very old at this point. I'll keep it just for now, but I'll probably order a new one. Pink Nudes is another one of their face palettes that I don't believe they make anymore, so I'm just gonna put this in the declutter. And then we have Violets. I'm pretty sure I have more of these in the second Profusion drawer, so this isn't all that they have, but this was another really beautiful one. So let's see how we did with this drawer. All right, so for this drawer, I am decluttering 10, keeping 13. So not too bad, but the only thing is this drawer still isn't gonna close because this palette is so big. I'm thinking I may actually transfer these over to the baskets on the other side of my room just because I think these are like thicker, bulkier palettes. So kind of like I did with the Moira, I think they might work better over there. So I may just switch something out. Let me just see what I can do. Okay, yeah, so I put the Moira ones over here. I think what I'm gonna do is go over into this basket. I'm going to take the Juvia's Place and put those with the Moira, and then these Makeup Revolution ones I'll just put in the Profusion basket, and then this basket will be empty and I'll put all my Profusion in here. Okay, so I was able to fit the Makeup Revolution palettes in with my e.l.f. palettes in drawer number 10 over here, and then put the Profusion palettes in this basket where the Makeup Revolution and Juvia's Place used to be, and I moved the Juvia's over here with Moira. So it just gives it a little bit more extra space, and I do have another drawer of Profusion, so let's get to that one. All right, so this one is just more of the same. We have some of the larger palettes and also some of the smaller 10 pans. So let's just look at the larger ones first. We have the Sunkissed palette, which is a 35 shade palette. And this one I got more recently. I saw this at Walmart and I picked it up and I really haven't used it much. As you can see, it looks pretty untouched. I did swatch a couple shades and I think I used it on my eyes once or twice. It pretty much has every shade of the rainbow. I mean, you have like neutrals, you have greens, pinks, purples, blues, and then just some more neutrals over here. You have a pop of green, but I liked that this one wasn't super bright or neon and all the colors were a little bit softer. So I'm gonna keep this one. We also have the Mirage palette, and this one was very warm toned overall, but it did have a couple of pops of cool shades like these over here that I thought were kind of an interesting twist, but it was mostly neutral. It did, again, have the 3 pressed glitters, which I wasn't super happy about, but the rest of the palette I think is really nice. And then we have the Wanderlust palette. This one is a 21 shade, and it has basically your greens, blues, and purples with just a couple of neutrals thrown in. I mean, after a while, these do start to get a little bit redundant. I think there are other palettes that they have that look very similar to this one. So I don't know if I really need it or not, but I guess I'll hang on to it for now because I do think they still sell this. I don't know, I may talk about it in a video at some point. The Pro Pigment palette is another favorite because I love those dusty purpley shades. It does have a couple brighter pops of pink, but for the most part, it's a really very wearable palette. And Infatuation. This one I don't remember all that well, but it kind of looks similar to the Pro Pigment palette. There's not a whole lot of difference between these two. I do like this shade Sorcery over here, but it's hardly picking up. This kind of feels like it might be a really old one. Maybe that's why I don't remember. So I may actually declutter this one. Then the Temptress palette. This one is kind of like a smaller version of Wanderlust. I think they have a lot of the same types of colors in here with the purples and greens. I do like this color story, so I may keep this. Chocolates is another classic. This was really like beautiful earthy tones. You had the earthy browns and greens. This is super old as well. I might actually want to pick up a new one of these just because this was one of my favorite Profusion palettes, but I don't know if I feel comfortable using this one at this point because of how old it is. So I'll keep it for right now, but I will probably replace it at some point soon. I have a feeling I'm just going to go on the Profusion website and just order a couple new versions of my favorites because going through this drawer is making me want to use these palettes again, but some of them, I don't know, they're a little bit iffy. And then we have some 10 pan palettes. So we have the mauves. This one is a beautiful mauvey pink type of color story. This is one of my favorites. The Royals has some really pretty kind of jewel tones. So that's another good one. The Mattes is an all matte palette. I don't really wear all matte palettes all that much, but this is a really good option for $6 if you're into matte eyeshadows. Then the Sapphires I liked, even though this is an all blue palette, I liked that it offered some neutrals as well, just to kind of ground the look. So you don't have to do all blue. You can just pick maybe one blue and then put it with some neutrals just for a little pop of color. That's usually what I do. Then the last one is the shimmers, and this one was an all shimmer palette. I would say out of all of them, I probably use this one the least. So I may go ahead and just declutter this one. So in this drawer, we're actually keeping most of them. So we're keeping 10 and decluttering 2. And I just went ahead and put the rest of them in this basket. I'm so glad that I did this because they fit so much better, and I was able to empty 2 of the drawers on the other side of the room so I can use those for something else. So all right, moving right along. All right, next drawer, we're kind of back to some higher end palettes. So first up, I have the Patrick Ta Major Dimension palettes. So I have 1, 2, and 3. I guess we could start with palette number 1. So this one has really beautiful warm tones, and it has the 2 creams over here on the side under this little door, which I really like because then they don't dry out. And then he has mostly shimmer shades along the top and then the mattes along the bottom. And I like how it's laid out. It just makes it super easy. I really like this formula, so I'm definitely keeping all 3 of these. The second one is probably my favorite. This one had rosier shades, and I loved some of the duochromes that were in here. This shade that goes from kind of like a copper to a pink. It's got gold. It's really beautiful. And then this one also, which had gold that shifts to pink, or pink that shifts to gold, I guess. So I'm definitely keeping this one as well. And then Major Dimension 3 is the newest one. This just was released recently, and it's all mattes. So this one also, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of all matte palettes, but I did like this one. I just think the mattes are so creamy and incredibly pigmented. So I'm going to hang on to this one as well. Like I said, I just got it, so I'm going to keep on playing with this one. I also have 2 palettes from Scott Barnes. I ordered these from his website because I don't think he's in stores anywhere, but correct me if I'm wrong. I have this one, which is the Snatchural 2, and I just loved the cool tones in here. I thought this was such a beautiful, like very muted type of color story. And I thought his formula was also pretty good. It was pigmented. The mattes especially are very creamy, so I was happy with it. And I haven't played with this as much as I'd like, so I'm definitely going to keep it. Same thing with the larger palette that I got. This is the Glamazon Snatchural number 2. And this one I thought was also really pretty. I love some of the tones that are in here. This blue gray is really gorgeous on the lid. Also, this one on the list has a bit of a duochrome shift to it. I love that there's these muted kind of grayish greens down here, as well as like a pop of purple, pink. It's just really nice. So I'm definitely gonna take this one out a little bit more and play with it as well. The rest of this bin, unfortunately, is probably gonna go to the declutter pile. I have all of my Zoeva palettes in here, and while I love Zoeva as a brand and I have loved these palettes for many years, they're super old, and I'm probably just going to pick out 1 or 2 that were my favorites and declutter the rest. And the reason for that is because Zoeva has discontinued all of their eyeshadow palettes. All of these are no longer available. They went with a new formula. I don't know if it was that they were reformulating them to be vegan. It was something like that. So these are never coming back, and I haven't tried the new formula, so I don't know what that's like, but I loved the old one so much. So first up, we have the Cocoa Blend. This one, I think, was the one that got the most attention. All of the, big beauty gurus at the time just talking about this one, and everybody really loved it. So this was a really good one. I don't know if I'm going to keep it. I might keep this one. Spice of Life is another one that I really enjoyed. Even though it's warm tones, I loved the unexpected pop of kind of taupe. This was one of my favorite lid shades. And this green as well, I thought was really nice. I loved this pink shade. It was just kind of, like I said, an unexpected color story a little bit. So I might put this one in the keep pile. I'll have to kind of go back over them again and see what I think in the end. Caramel Melange, this one was a little bit more of a warm tone color story. I don't think I'll keep this one because I have so many palettes with the warm tones like this, and it's not different enough for me to feel like I need to keep it, although I did love this shade Liquid Center. It was just such a beautiful, really soft metallic, but I'm going to put this in the declutter for right now. The Heritage palette, this one I really wasn't the biggest fan of. I felt like a couple of the shades in this one got hard pan, and for some reason, the formula just wasn't there. I don't know why, but yeah, I think I'm gonna declutter this one. Eclectic Eyes was another really beautiful one. I loved, again, the muted tones that were in here. It was a little bit of color, but not too much. I think it's really pretty, but I'm probably gonna declutter this one too. The Aristo palette had just really soft color. It wasn't anything too bright. But, I thought it was a pretty unique color story, but I'm going to go ahead and put this in the declutter as well because it wasn't one of my favorites. Cafe, I loved. This one was so pretty as far as the colors, but again, I was a little bit disappointed in the formula of this one. I felt like this shade was hard to pick up. This one, they're a little bit, like I said, just kind of hard pressed, and it was hard to get as much pigment up as I wanted. So this one, unfortunately, is going to go in the declutter as well. This one was called I See, and it had the eyes all over it. And this one wasn't one of my favorites either. I felt like, for me, it was hard to come up with looks with this one. It was very shimmer heavy, not a lot of mattes to work with. So I'm going to declutter this one. As you can see, I had so many Zoeva palettes, so I really did love them as a brand, and I'm disappointed that they seem to have gotten away from palettes. They only have a couple on their website at the moment. So the Premier palette, this one, Again, I liked it. I think I'm probably going to declutter it though, because I feel like I have other things like this. My favorite shade was this duochrome here, but I have this in so many other palettes, like this kind of gray that shifts to blue. I think it's a really common duochrome that you see a lot. I think I even had it in the Scott Barnes palette that I just showed, and I have it in ColourPop palettes. So I'm going to get rid of this one. Naturally Yours was a really soft, kind of muted, neutral color story. It reminds me a little bit of some Loreal palettes that I have. So I'm probably going to declutter this too because I don't think it's different enough for me to really hold on to it. The Opulence palette also wasn't really my favorite color story. It had some jewel tones in it and again was very shimmer heavy. You really only had 2 mattes here and here. So I'm going to get rid of this one. Screen Queen was kind of, again, softer colors. I did like this one, but as you can see, a lot of these shades were starting to get hard pan. I think I just used this one a lot and it's probably just showing its age. So I think I'm going to declutter this. By the way, this last series of drawers, I haven't ever decluttered. So that's why there's so many older palettes. The last few declutters I did, I only got halfway through my collection and then stopped. So that's why I'm probably going to be doing more of a heavy declutter in the next few drawers than I have been so far. So next we have the Zoeva Melody palette. This is definitely one of my favorites that they ever did. So I'm keeping this one for sure. This one had a couple of surprise shades that I wasn't expecting. For example, this one from Heaven it looks white in the pan, but when you swatch it, it has the most beautiful shift to it. I don't even know if it's going to show up on camera, but it kind of shifts a little bit to blue, maybe purple. I don't know. It's amazing. And then this one, Crystal Wings, also had a little bit of a shift to it. It was brown, but it has a green element to it. This purple was beautiful. I mean, this was just one of my favorites. I remember doing a video on this and I loved it. So I'm going to keep this one. Nude Spectrum was a very, again, nude or neutral palette. It reminds me a little bit of one of those Karity Cosmetics palettes that I decluttered earlier in the video. Maybe it was the Nudes and Rudes one. This looks really, really close to that, but again, it's nothing super special. So I'm gonna put this one in the declutter. And then Blanc Fusion. This is another one that sort of reminds me of the Loreal Unzipped palette, except for these yellow golds right here because it doesn't have those. But I think like all of these other colors reminds me so much of Unzipped. And those are the colors that I love the most out of this palette. So because I already have Unzipped, I think I will declutter this one. Then I just have a couple more Zoeva palettes. I have this one called Share Your Radiance, and I believe this was a holiday edition, limited edition palette. So I'm gonna go ahead and just declutter this one because I definitely don't need it. And then they also had little minis of some of their larger palettes. So this was their Caramel Melange mini. It had those really warm tones again, but I'm gonna put this one in the declutter. And this was the Precious eyeshadow palette, which had beautiful colors, but I don't think it's worth keeping. I know I have some ColourPop palettes with like a very similar color story, so I'm gonna declutter this one too. And then when it comes to Melt Cosmetics, this is tough because I sometimes use these, especially the Gemini palette, for comparison purposes. Once in a while, a green palette will come out and people will say, you know, how does it compare to the Gemini palette? And I want to be able to swatch this and compare it. So I do think I'm going to keep this one because this is one of their most popular palettes. And like I said, I may need to use it for my channel, but these other two have been discontinued. Nobody really talks about them. And to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of Melt's formula. I know some people are, but I find the shimmer shades to be super crumbly. They go everywhere. They kind of explode. And I've had some of them kind of like puff up in the pan, and I'm not sure why they're doing that. It kind of makes me worry a little bit, you know, as far as how well preserved they are and all of that. So I don't really use these on my eyes anymore. The 27 palette I thought was beautiful. It had a really warm toned color story, but look at how the shimmers, they kind of puffed up and then they cracked. And again, I'm not really sure why they were doing that. It's not like I dropped this palette or anything. The matte shades are perfectly fine. It's just the shimmers that do this weird thing. So I think I'm actually going to declutter this one. And same thing with their Mary Jane palette. I loved the smoky cool tones in here, but look at what a mess these shimmer shades are. They just kind of explode everywhere. And this one got extreme hard pan. It doesn't even pick up on my finger anymore. So I was disappointed with this formula as well. So this is going in the declutter. All right, so guys, final count on this drawer. I'm gonna keep these 3 Zoeva palettes, the Melt Gemini, the 2 Scott Barnes palettes, and the 3 Patrick Ta. The rest I'm decluttering. So I'm gonna be decluttering 17 palettes and keeping 9. All right, next up we have Natasha Denona. So I believe this entire bin is just my Natasha Denona palettes. They really don't fit in here very well. I don't know if I just need to reorganize them or what, or maybe I might have to put some in a different drawer, but I'm not going to be decluttering any of these. The reason for that is just because I like to use these for comparison purposes on my channel. A lot of times, you know, I get questions, how does this compare to this Natasha Denona palette or that one? So I just like to have all of them available. So I guess let's just go through them really quickly. I'll just kind of open each one and show you the color story. So the first one is the Zendo palette. And this one was a little bit more on the colorful side. You had these blues and greens over here. You also had some rosy tones and some warm shades. So I thought this was a really pretty one. It's not too bold and bright. So I think even if you're somebody who mostly wears neutrals, I felt like this one wasn't too colorful. Of course, we have the I Need a Nude palette from this year. This one, again, really beautiful, just everyday neutrals. There's some cool shades in here mixed with some warm. And, you know, I wasn't a huge fan of the shimmers in this one because they're those toppers that just sort of look like glitter and they don't have a ton of color behind them. A lot of them look the same. When you swatch them, they're all kind of this like light pale champagne color. And then you do have, you know, a couple of browns and grays. But as you've heard me say many times in these eyeshadow palette declutters, I really prefer the traditional metallic shimmer shades that don't have a lot of glitter. Next, we had my Dream palette. This one had some rosy tones as well as some warm tones. It does go a little bit deep and smoky, and then also you have some light shades. So I think it's a really nice, more balanced palette. So this is another favorite of mine for sure. And then we have the Glam palette. The Glam palette is probably the one that I think has gotten the most use from me because it has the shimmer shades that I like these really nice, soft, metallic, kind of creamy shades. And also, I think it has a nice mixture of cool tones and warm tones. Like you have this cool section over here, this deeper gray, and then the taupes, and then you have some warmer shades as well. So I think no matter if I'm going for a warm look or a cool look, I can just grab this palette and get either one. So this one I think is probably my favorite. Next up, we have the Yucca palette. You've heard me mention this one a few times in this video and also in the last one from last week. And that's because there are some palettes that I've been coming across that have this sort of yellowy green color story. And I did really like this one too. I found it to be a little bit more interesting and unique. There aren't a lot of color stories out there like this. And now that I'm looking at it, I don't feel like the Urban Decay Naked Honey is really a good dupe for this one because that one is really truly just browns and a little bit of yellow. And I think this one has more green in it. It also has this kind of deeper pewter gray color. So yeah, I really think this one's a little bit more colorful and not quite as monochromatic as that. But I still do think that the Profusion Harvest palette is really close to this one. All right, next up we have the Xenon palette. This is also a relatively new release, and it was really all black and gray and silver. Again, not my favorite. I feel like the ColourPop Blow and Smoke palette, which is a 9-pan, has all of these colors in it that I would need. And then some of the rest in here just feel a little bit redundant. I don't know. I just feel like how many different types of silver or gray could I really need, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I know there's some people who really like this, but it wasn't my favorite. Next up is Retro Glam. This one had really beautiful greens and pinks. And this was another just really pretty kind of unique color story. I don't have a lot that look like this one, so I enjoyed this palette a lot. Again, I felt like the shimmer shades were the type that I really like. They had nice pigmentation, they were very soft. Of course, the matte shades also showed up well. So this was another great one. I also have the Glam Face palette. So this one had 5 eyeshadows down at the bottom, and then under the little door you had a cream blush and a highlighter. So this was just a really nice face palette, a great travel option. So I like this one. I don't use it as much as I thought I would when I first got it, but I don't know, I just have a tendency to not reach for face palettes all that much. But I'll have to keep this in mind when I go on trips and things like that, because it's nice to have everything all in one. Then we have the Metropolis palette, or maybe I'll just go through the rest of the middies first and then I'll do the bigger ones. So next up is bronze. And this one is a very, very warm, bronzy type of palette. I also felt like this one had some redundant shades in it. Like these two looked kind of similar. Some of these coppery ones looked kind of similar. You know, I feel like this could have been sort of shrunken down into maybe a 9 pan or even a 12 pan rather than 15, because I just felt like there were some repeats, but it's still a beautiful palette, and definitely if you like warm tones, I think it's really nice. Retro is one of my other favorite color stories from her. I just love the rosy shades in here. I think they're so beautiful. My biggest complaint with this palette is that there are a lot of those cream to powder mattes in here, and they just don't hold up for me. Like this one is a cream formula. This one was a cream. This one was a cream right here. And these just end up going on very sheer. They don't always show up the best, and they're hard, especially with a brush. I think they actually are more pigmented with your fingers, but when you try to like put a brush into these, I feel like they don't pick up very well, and as a result, they don't really translate as well on the eyes. This one was actually a cream as well, so there were several different ones in here, and I would have preferred regular powder mattes, but that being said, I do love the colors in this one. Also, we have the pastel palette, and this one was really pretty, fun. Again, I think more of a unique color story that you don't see every day. But I also felt like this one was hard for me to use because it's a little bit all over the place. There were no neutral shades in here at all. So really, I had to try to find, you know, color to pair with color, and for me, that's not always easy. So I know that's just like a me thing. It's not for everybody. But that being said, there are some really stunning shades in here. This one, Duet, is the most beautiful duochrome. I also loved this shade Daisy right here. Mint Frost is another gorgeous one for the lid. Sometimes when I would use this palette, I would just grab some matte neutral shades from a different palette and then use one of these shimmers on my lid because I just think they're really beautiful. So that's a pastel. Then we have the Sunrise palette. So this one is kind of the sister palette to the Sunset, which you'll see over here. That's like an older one that I have. This one is a little bit more pink. It has these pink and purple shades over here, while the original Sunset was more like yellow, orange, red. So I think I do prefer this one a little bit more. I think some of these colors, again, are beautiful. This shade Aster had a duochrome finish, although it's not really picking up very well. This one, Awakening, also was really pretty. So that's the Sunrise palette. The Love palette, I'm not sure is still available. It might be on her website, but I'm pretty sure this is no longer at Sephora. And this was a Valentine's Day release, so it could have been a limited edition. But again, very pretty. It definitely screams Valentine's Day. And I love the pinks and purples. So this is definitely another palette that's right up my alley color-wise. All right, now let's get into some of the older palettes. These are the ones that used to come in kind of the soft cardboard, but it had like a little bit of a coated outside, so they were a little more shiny. This is the Metropolis palette. This one had a ton of shades in it. How many shades were in this one? 28 altogether. So this one had a lot of those earthy tones. It had some pops of jewel tones here and there as well. And it was a very warm tone for the most part, with just a couple pops of cooler shades. So that was Metropolis. Then we had the Star palette. This is probably the most expensive palette I've ever purchased, and I think it was one of her most expensive palettes. And to be honest, I wasn't crazy about the formula of this one. As you can see, it just kind of exploded everywhere. All of these glittery shades were super crumbly. Like you can see if I put my finger into it, it's Fallout City. Like all of these shades are just incredibly like loosely packed. Like, do you see how this is? If you just even move them, they make a total mess. I don't want to completely mess up this palette, but yeah, this one really is not my favorite, but it was so expensive. I just feel like I have to keep it again in case I have to do any comparisons. Next up, we have the Gold palette. This is another one of my favorites. I loved the color story of this one. Whoops, sorry. yeah, I just felt like these beautiful turquoise colors pair so beautifully with gold. It's one of my favorite combinations. And also you had this really stunning duochrome that I just love so much. And I liked how it was mostly neutral, but then you had a few pops of color for the lid. So this is a really good one. All right, so then here is the original Sunset palette. So this is the one I was talking about that's really like orange, red, yellow kind of color story. Very, very warm toned, but this is definitely a classic. I think this was the first one I ever purchased from her, actually. Next, we have the Biba palette. This one is an all matte palette, or no, actually, why did I think it was all matte? It does have 3 shimmers, but it's mostly matte. And this one, again, it's really warm toned in the first 2 rows. The bottom row is a little bit more on the cooler side, but a lot of people love this one. And when similar palettes come out, I always get questions, how does it compare to Biba? So that's one of the main reasons I keep this one. I don't really use it all that much because, again, I do love shimmer shades on my lid and I rarely wear all matte eyeshadow looks. So anyway, next we have the Lila palette, or Lila. I don't know. I knew somebody named Lila and this was how her name was spelled, but I've seen other YouTubers say Lila. So I have no idea how Natasha Denona says it. But anyway, I thought this one was really beautiful. You have some neutrals, but also the purples and pinks, which are definitely some of my favorite shades to wear. So this is another one. I'm not sure if it's still available or if it's been discontinued, but I still like to hang on to it. And the Safari palette, I think this one is definitely no longer around. This one was all matte. And there are some absolutely gorgeous shades in here. But again, this is probably the cleanest palette out of any of them. And I think it's because I probably wore it the least. Again, not a huge fan of all matte palettes, but I do keep it just for my channel. So those are all the full-size palettes. Then I just have these minis. So this first one isn't really a mini. This was the Camel palette, and it did have full-size eyeshadows in it. So there are 5 of them all together, 2 shimmers, 3 mattes, and I just thought this was a really good basic everyday kind of travel palette. So I really like this one, and kind of similar to this is the mini Nude. It's just like a smaller version, basically. It also has the 5 shades. The colors are slightly different, but I feel like it's pretty close. I ended up getting this one after I got the Camel one. Then we have the mini Dream palette, which I just got very recently, like a week ago, and it is super pretty. This is one of my favorites of the minis by far. I think it's just so easy to do a full complete look with this one, so I love that. This is the mini Star, which I showed you guys as a dupe for, or not a dupe, but it was similar to that Physicians Formula Butter Believe It palette that I had. This is another really beautiful one, and I think it's really versatile for a small palette because you have, you know, a crease color, something to kind of deepen the crease or outer corner, and then really you can use 3 different shimmers on the lid, like one at a time, to create 3 very different looks. So you could do like these 2 as your base with that on the lid, or these 2 as your base and then this on the lid, or this on the lid. So I like how versatile this one is for sure. The mini Retro palette looks a lot like Retro Glam, actually. It has the beautiful soft sagey greens and the pinks, so I really like this one too. This is the mini Glam palette, and again, it's really similar to the bigger one. It doesn't have any repeat shades, but just like the overall vibe is kind of similar. It has those neutrals. This one is the mini Biba, and really I don't get Biba from this one. Let me just compare them really quick, but I mean, yeah, I guess it kind of looks like the top 2 rows maybe kind of combined, but they didn't add anything from the bottom row. So it's just more like a peachy color story. So I think it's really pretty. Then we have the mini Love palette with the pinks and purples. This is also really gorgeous. Mini Gold has the greens and golds, but funny enough, these greens are kind of more olivey greens, and in the palette they were more turquoise. So it's a little bit of a different vibe than the original gold, but I still really like it. I love green eyeshadows, so I'm all for this one. And then this one was the mini Zendo, and I do feel like this represents the bigger palette really well. So anyway, that's my whole Natasha Denona collection. I'm gonna try to fit these back in here and see if it works. If not, I'm gonna have to maybe transfer some to a different drawer. All right, yeah, so I'm definitely gonna have to put these in 2 different drawers, but I'm keeping 30 palettes all together for this one. All right, let's move on to some indie palettes. So I have my Sydney Grace and Kaleidos palettes in this drawer. So we'll start with Sydney Grace, one of my absolute favorite eyeshadow formulas of all time. And first we have their Enduring Love palette. So this is the first palette I ever bought from them. It's what made me fall in love with their formula. It's just unreal. The shimmer shades especially, I feel like, are just on another level from anything else that we have at regular, like, traditional stores like Sephora and Ulta. And their matte shades honestly are not that shabby either, like very, very pigmented. You actually kind of have to be careful with these a little bit. So this was the Enduring Love palette. Then I bought the Tiny Marbles palette, which was Mel Thompson's palette. I feel sad every time I look at this. I really miss her channel a lot. But this was another really beautiful one. I love the mix of colors in here. And of course, you have your neutrals as well. So that's another really good one. I did just order actually their new palette that came out, so that hasn't come yet, but I have a ton of their singles. So those were just the two like pre-made palettes that I have. And then I have some single shadows in this little palette. It's not completely filled up yet. I don't know why, but I just love these. These are some of my favorite shades, like Winter Garden right here. It's a gorgeous duochrome. The Greatest Gift is another beautiful duochrome. So yeah, I just love these. I also have two really huge palettes with more singles. So honestly, who needs pre-made palettes? I have all the colors right here. So in this one, I have 5 of their blushes, which are also beautiful, by the way. And then these are all of my kind of more cooler toned shadows from them, and they are just stunning. I would say this is probably the one that I reach for the most out of these two bigger, more custom palettes. And then this one, I think I have all my warm tones in. Yeah, so these are my Sydney Grace singles up here that are warmer toned. And then these are actually Give Me Glow singles on the bottom. And some of these are insane. Like these right here are regular shimmer shades. But when I say regular, I mean, they're still incredible. But then I have these special ones like this. What was this one called? This is Electric Unicorn. It was pricey, but like, okay, it's also a little bit flaky, but look at that color. It's so insane. Let me just swatch it quick because I want to show you guys what this looks like swatched out. It's amazing. It's like a multi-chrome. It's so beautiful. And then here's like their regular shimmer shade, which is also beautiful, but like this is on another level. I would definitely just recommend maybe some glitter glue with this one to keep it on. And also this one, Rose Remix, is another crazy one. It just looks so metallic. Look at that. They're beautiful. So anyway, that's this one. And okay, so those are all my Sydney Grace and Give Me Glow. Let's talk about Kaleidos. So I have some of their larger palettes. I have some of these Futurism ones, which have been discontinued. So maybe we'll talk about those first. Those are the ones that their first palettes actually that I ever got. So we have Futurism 1, which is Sci-Fi Green. I'm definitely keeping all of these because you can't get them anymore. And I love them. I think they were some of my favorites. So this was the Sci-Fi Green one, and these are all the types of greens that I really love. I'm sorry, by the way, if it sounds like I'm losing my voice. I've just been talking so much. Then this one is Futurism 2, which was Soft Bronze. So this had some warmer neutrals and also these red and silver down here. Just like a really interesting color story. Futurism 3, Astro Pink, was one of my favorites actually because of this shade right here, if I can get it. Light Year. So gorgeous. So I would usually use like this one in my crease, which is kind of like a rosy brown, this one on the outer corner, and then this one on the lid. It's just such a beautiful color, really makes an impact on your eyes. And then for some reason I seem to be missing 4 and 5. I don't know where those are. They might be in a different drawer. So 6 was Lunar Lavender. This was also such a beautiful one. This shade was my favorite for sure. It was called Moonroof. And then number 7 was also just so pretty. I loved these shimmer shades. They were so interesting, really unique because they had a little bit of a duochrome shift to them. And these other colors, just like really soft, easy neutrals. So I'm definitely keeping all of those. I also have their Flower Punk palette. I forgot all about this one. So this one, the lid came off, which was kind of weird, but It reminded me a lot of Melt Cosmetics, just the way that the packaging is and like the whole setup of it just kind of reminded me of their stuff. I don't know if they make this one anymore either. I haven't heard anybody talk about this in forever, but I do kind of keep and collect Kaleidos palettes, so I'm gonna keep this one. I also have the Club Nebula palette, which was Angie's palette from here on YouTube, and this is another really nice one. Do they still make this? I'm not sure, but I loved this palette as well. I just thought these shimmers were absolutely gorgeous, so I'm definitely keeping this one as well. Then we have the Escape Pod. This one was colorful, but like really fun. You had kind of some neon shades in here. It's different than most of the other palettes that I have in my collection. Again, I don't know if this is still out there or not, but in general, I just think they do a fantastic job with their palettes. And then I have some of their smaller palettes. So these two were from, I can't remember what the name of this collection was, but we had these really deep and smoky kind of Natasha Denona Xenon vibe going on with this one. And then this one was just more of like your chocolatey brown shades, which again, formula was so good. And I loved this one in particular. And the mattes in these are just like the most soft velvety mattes ever. So all right, I'm gonna keep those. Then there were these two from a different collection. We had Glowing Iris and Flowing Haze. So Glowing Iris was beautiful purples, and these all kind of follow the same pattern. You have the shimmer shade and then 3 mattes, and then Flowing Haze was like a pink, a really deep, rich purple, and then some neutrals. And then these last two, we had Venus Trap and Twilight Rush. So in here, we had, again, some gray, a really, really pale pink, and then a bright silver. And in here you had some more purple shades as well. So yeah, I'm gonna keep everything in this drawer. So let me just do a quick final count. All right, so in this drawer, I'm gonna be keeping 19 palettes. All right, we're on the second to last drawer. So this has just more indie brands and some other bigger brands like Charlotte Tilbury. So let's start out, I guess, first with Dominique Cosmetics. So I have 3 palettes from her, and I think I'm going to declutter all of these. And the reason for that is just because I never wear them. Some of them are older. I do have this newer one, but I'll explain in just a second. But first we have the Rustic Glam palette. So I felt like this was kind of an interesting, color story. But I thought that these matte shades were just so patchy. They were really nicely pigmented, but they didn't blend well on the eyes. And I noticed like some of the shimmer shades would get hard pan really easily. So it wasn't my favorite formula in the world. So I definitely am going to declutter this one. I also have her Latte palette, which again, I felt like this one got a lot of hype when it first came out. And these shimmers actually were really nice. Again, I sort of had the patchiness issue with the mattes. I'm not sure why, or if it was just me, but I just really never reach for this one. So I'm also going to declutter this. And then we have the Essential palette, which came out, I want to say really recently, like last year. And this one does seem to have a little bit of a different formula, but as you can see, like these shimmers, as you put your finger into them, they're just Fallout City. They go everywhere. And then this one is just so hard pressed that it's like hard to even pick it up. I don't know, I just felt like there were sort of some quality issues with these and inconsistencies. So again, this is another one, I just really don't wear it. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and declutter this too. Oh my gosh, there's actually another Sydney Grace palette in here. This was the Be Mine palette. I wanna say it was a Valentine's Day release from a couple of years ago, and it's really beautiful. So, I'm gonna keep it because it's Sydney Grace. So I'm gonna just throw this one in the last bin. Moving on, I have this palette from Wander Beauty. I completely forgot about this. It was very pretty as far as the colors, but it's also not something that I wore very often. I felt like the matte shades were the kind that just sort of blend away to nothing. Like when you put them on, they really don't grip to the eyes very well. And I mean, the shimmer shades were nice, but it sort of reminded me of Milani's new formula a little bit, where I like the shimmers, but the mattes are just too blendable. So I'm going to declutter this one. I also have a few palettes from Charlotte Tilbury. So this is the Pillow Talk Instant Eye palette. This one I really liked. I thought the formula was great. It had those really soft rosy tones. So I think I'm going to hang on to this one. I don't know if it's even still around, but I did like it. So I'm going to put this one over here. This one was the Bejeweled Eyes to Hypnotize. I think this one was like a holiday release. And this one was also really pretty. I liked how she grouped the shades by color. So you have like kind of little trios that you could work with that all sort of go together. But I'm pretty sure this one's been discontinued now, and I really never reach for it. So I think I'm gonna declutter this one. I also have this little mini from Charlotte Tilbury. This one is the Easy Eye palette for the Charlotte Darling look. So this one just had warm tones, and like I said, I liked her formula. I thought it was really nice and creamy, very, very pigmented and soft and ultra smooth. So I really like this. The only Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadows I'm not crazy about are her quads. For some reason, those are so hard to pick up. I feel like the formula is really stiff, and this was completely different than those. So I think I did have one of her quads at one point. I'm pretty sure I discontinued it. Not, why do I keep saying that? Decluttered. I'm pretty sure I decluttered that one. So yeah, I think I'm gonna keep this because I do like the formula. And then this was her holiday palette from this year, which you may or may not have seen me do a video on. I just felt like it was horrible. The matte shades were fine. Those are almost like a creamy matte formula. They're really nice, but the shimmers were all over the place. I thought this one was beautiful. It was really pigmented. The rest of them, like, do not pick up. Like, I could just keep going back and forth in the pan, and it's hardly there. It's just like the faintest wash of glitter when I put it on, and they're all like that. They just don't pick up. I don't know what the deal is. And also I felt like the colors in here were so off. Like if you cover up these three, the pink seems to go really well with these pretty ethereal metallic shades, but these up here, all of a sudden they're like really warm and they don't go with the pink and purple. They kind of go with the gold, I guess, but the rest just, it didn't make sense. I don't know. So anyway, I'm going to declutter this one because I really don't have any intentions of using it. I also have some singles that I bought from Lethal Cosmetics, and these also, I mean, this is an indie brand, and I thought that they were just stunning. I got these maybe like 2 months ago, but they just have these beautiful multi-chrome finishes. They're insanely gorgeous. They're kind of expensive to put a whole palette like this together. I want to say was like $60 or $70. The quality is definitely well worth it. So I'm going to keep this for sure. And let me just swatch these so you can see, like, look at that. They're just amazing. Oh my gosh, I have a palette from Stila. This is so old. It's really heavy too. Do you guys remember this palette? What was this called? This is called the After Hours eyeshadow palette. I highly doubt they still make this. This is very, very old at this point. Wow, as you can see, I didn't really use this one all that much, so I think it's time to declutter it. But now that I'm thinking about it, does Stila even have eyeshadow palettes anymore? When I go into Ulta, I don't notice eyeshadows in their section. They seem to have a lot of face products and lip products, but I haven't seen them release eyeshadow in a long time. All right, I also have some Kylie palettes, which I'm gonna declutter because I'm not a big fan of hers. This is it was like a peach palette or something. I can't remember. Royal Peach. This was another really kind of hyped palette for the time, but I really didn't reach for it, and I didn't think the formula was the greatest. This one, I don't even know what these are called. They don't really have anything on them. I think it was the bronze palette or something like that, and it just has all of these bronzy tones. So I'm going to declutter this as well. I also had a KKW palette, and this one was like a rosy tone shade. This was Classic Blossom. And this is, I feel like this is almost like a collector's item because KKW doesn't exist anymore, although I did hear they were, coming out with a new line. But either way, I don't use it anymore, so I'm going to declutter this one as well. Then I have a couple more Kylie palettes. This one, oh my gosh, I actually liked this one. I liked the color story of it. There was just something about like these tones and how they all went together. Do you guys remember Bad Habit Beauty from Shop Hush? They had a copy of this palette that I really liked as well. And then it made me want to buy the original because I used that one all the time. So then I ended up getting this one. I didn't feel like, again, the formula was the greatest, but I don't know. I just kind of liked how all these colors work together. But either way, I'm still going to declutter it. And then I also had her birthday palette. So this one just had some kind of neutrals mixed with some pops of pink and blue. So all of the Kylie and Kim Kardashian palettes are going away. Next up is Viseart. So Viseart, I'm going to keep all of these palettes. I love them so much. This is one of my favorite formulas. So I just got these two very recently. So I have the Violet palette, which has these absolutely stunning purple shades. And their formula is one of my favorites. The matte shades are the absolute smoothest and easiest to blend if you're especially like new at eyeshadow or you're just not a good blender like how I am, then I think you'll really love this. They're super easy to use. So this was Violet, and then Violet Vespertine was a little bit kind of more of a muted violet color story, but I feel like it's not as purple as it is neutral. I still love this one though. I've worn this recently in a couple videos and people are always like, what's on your eyes? So I definitely get compliments on this palette every time I wear it. This one's the Petite Pro Un. So this one is just like a basic neutral palette. I actually think I got this on sale at one point and I haven't even used it yet. So I think, I don't know, I might actually just declutter this and I'll give it to somebody that I know because like I said, it's untouched and it's really beautiful neutrals, but I don't know, I feel like I don't need these colors. I have them already. So I just figured I'll give it to somebody who can use it. Then we have the Dark Edit palette. This one is a super deep dark color story, very smoky. It has a little bit of color in it as well. Again, it's not one that I wear very often, but I have used this in comparisons quite a few times, so I'm gonna hang on to it just for that reason. I also have a few more of these little ones. So this is the Solstice palette. I believe this was a summertime release that they had come out with, maybe like a couple, I don't know, 2 summers ago, something like that. This was the warmer toned option. They had one called Midsummer, which was a little bit more cool toned, and this is super pretty too. It's just, again, very easy to wear type of colors. I also have the Paris Edit, which is beautiful. Again, very cool toned. I love this one as well. And then we have the Paris Love Letter. So this one had mostly neutrals, but you had a couple pops of color in here as well. So, all right, I'm gonna keep my Viseart palettes. Then we have the Artist Couture Supreme Nudes palette. Do you guys remember this? This is another really iconic one that it got so much hype and then it kind of just disappeared. I don't really hear too much about this brand in general, but I did love this palette once upon a time. I just think, again, like it's not really anything different than what I already have. So I think it's probably time to declutter this one because I really don't reach for it. And then last but not least in this drawer is Bare Minerals. So I have this Bare Minerals palette called Aurora Lights. This was one of my favorites back in the day. I don't know if you guys remember this, but I loved these really soft, muted colors, and the formula was just so nice. Like these were just the softest shadows. They had more of a satiny finish versus metallic. They were really, really pretty, but this is so old. I think it's probably time to let it go. I also had the Bare Sensuals palette, and this was another favorite. I remember talking about this in videos so much, or maybe it was even before I had my channel. It might have been my blog. I don't know. I just remember talking about this over and over when I got it. It has these really light, dusty, mauvey, purpley shades, and at the time I thought it was beautiful. I look at it now and feel like it's kind of too light. Like there's not really a lot of mid-tone options and there's really not a lot of deep options. This whole half of the palette is just almost pastel. So I'm gonna declutter this one too. And these I'm actually sad that they're not available anymore. These were the Gen Nude palettes, and I thought that this formula was so good. So they had the rose one, which honestly isn't that rosy, but it was just kind of like dusty neutrals. I'm gonna declutter these two, by the way, just because they're really, really old. The Latte palette, which had really pretty warm tones. Then we had Neutral, which was just warmer browns, almost like with a little bit of a rosy undertone. And then Copper had kind of coppery shades over here, but then you had this dusty pink and a green. So anyway, I guess let's go ahead and count up. I'm actually decluttering more in this drawer than just about any other. So let's see. Okay, so for this drawer, I'm keeping 10 palettes, decluttering 20. So finally, I feel like I'm making a little bit of progress. All right, guys, so here is the final drawer. Unfortunately, this is not it because I still had some palettes that were kind of stacked on top of all of my drawers that just didn't fit inside. So we still have to kind of go through those, but this drawer is LA Girl, and I'm gonna do a pretty brutal declutter of these because a lot of these palettes are no longer available and I really don't need to keep them all. So I'm just gonna go through these pretty quickly. The first one is the Sun-Kissed Glow palette. So this was an all warm tone palette that they came out with a while ago. I like it, but it's definitely not unique, you know, for my collection. I think their formula is really fantastic though, especially for the drugstore. So I am gonna declutter this one just because it's not anything that I can talk about on my channel anymore. As far as the ones that I'm going to keep, these, which are their newer palettes, they're still on the Ulta website. You can still get them, so I'm definitely gonna hang on to them for now. And these also have their really nice formula. So this was the Pro Neutrals, and they have, again, the eyeshadows that I really like. They're very soft, creamy, metallic, not super glittery, and I find their mattes to also be really soft and blendable. So this is Pro Neutrals, then they have Pro Pastels. And this one's really pretty too. I feel like it's not super pastel. It has a little bit more depth, which I like. So I'm gonna keep this one. And then Pro Jewels was also really beautiful. I just love the mix of tones in here. So I'm definitely gonna keep this. This palette I just got very recently, so I'm kind of debating whether I should keep it or not keep it because I didn't really love this formula. I felt like it's not up to their usual standard. So I kind of want to declutter it, but at the same time, I just bought it and I may at some point do a video on like products that I didn't like or something. I don't know. I guess I'll just hang on to it for now, but I'll probably end up decluttering it at the end of the year. This one is one that I really like as well. This is the Keep It Playful palette, and this is a 9-pan. I really enjoy these 9-pans. I think they're really nice. Again, the formula is good. My only complaint about some of their shimmer shades can be a little bit crumbly, but at the same time, they're super pigmented. So I would just like wear a glitter primer or something and they'll be fine. But I think the mattes are really good, nicely pigmented. Also new from them are these 4Play eyeshadow palettes. So these are kind of similar to like the e.l.f. Bite Size. This one is So Sweet. So this has rosy shades. I'm gonna keep all of these, by the way, too. This one is Cowgirl. So this one has more neutrals with that pop of green over here. And then this one is Seduce. This one's pretty neutral for the most part. It does have this peachy matte over here. And then this one is Feel Good, also with some rosy shades. So again, I'm gonna keep all of those. But now as far as the rest, I'm probably going to declutter these because, like I mentioned, they're no longer available. I think actually the Pro Artistry and the Pro Mastery palette are still on their website. So I might hang on to these. These were kind of like their original palettes. So the Pro Mastery was rosy neutral shades. And when I say original palettes, I just mean in this newer formula that they started coming out with in recent years. And like I said, these are just really nicely pigmented. You hardly have to touch the shadows and they pick up so easily. And they made me really impressed with LA Girl because before that I felt like their eyeshadows were just so-so. So that was Pro Mastery. I guess I'll keep that one. And then Pro Artistry had a little bit more color to it. So again, you had warm neutrals, but the rest was kind of green and blue. And so anyway, those two I guess I'll hang on to. All the rest of these are gonna go. So this one had really warm shades mixed with rosy colors, and I do really like this one. I have to say, out of all the color stories, this one's definitely near the top of my list, but I do have other palettes that are like this already, so I'm gonna let that one go. They also had one called Nudie Cutie, and this one is kind of very similar to the Mastery one, the Pro Mastery, except this one I feel like has a lot more rosy tones. This one is a little bit more yellow toned, which isn't my favorite. So I'm gonna go ahead and declutter this. Then they had Festy Bestie, which was a really colorful one. And this one I really didn't wear all that often. So I'm gonna declutter this one too. Fierce and Wild kind of reminded me a little bit of Pro Mastery. It didn't have the greens, but it kind of had all the other similar shades, so it doesn't really make sense to keep this one. And then Main Stage had like blues and purples, a couple pops of green. This one was pretty, but again, I really don't need it. VIP Desert Dream was really warm tone shades, a lot of yellow. Again, I have these colors a million times over. Then this one was the Serenity palette. I like this color story too. I think it's beautiful, but this palette is also really, really old, so I'm gonna let this one go. They also had one called Break Free. There were so many of these that came out. I'm kind of like wowed by how many there were. I was thinking there were only a few iterations of these palettes, but there's actually a lot. So this one was all kind of those warm and toasty shades. Then the other Break Free one, which was called Wingin' It, was all pinks and purples. Ooh, I really like this one. I kind of forgot about it. It even had like a duochrome. That's really nice, but it's old. So let's put this over here. This one is Hey Hey Vacay. This was Tropicool. So it had kind of these pretty tropical shades. I forgot about some of these, really. It's kind of like a trip down memory lane. And then this one was Unplugged. So again, it had warm tones with some green. I mean, a lot of these I feel like have some repeats in them. So, all right, declutter that one. Fierce and Wild. This was the Boho palette. This one's really pretty too, but again, like, are you guys seeing the repeats? I feel like there's a lot of the same shades in most of these palettes. So, all right, that's those. And then I have a couple of holiday palettes from LA Girl. So this one was called Holidays. And I remember this one. It was really beautiful, kind of deep and smoky. It had some pretty jewel tones like the emerald greens and the rich royal blue. But again, this was a very limited edition holiday palette, so I'm gonna declutter that. Oh my gosh, this one was my favorite, probably my favorite LA Girl palette ever. So this was called Born Exclusive, and wait till you see the colors in here. Like, it's so pretty. Look at that. I love all of these shades. Like, even the color that's in here, it's just so soft and pretty. There were so many beautiful shades to pick from, and like some of my favorites were Leisure and Exclusive. Love the purples, also some of these rosy tones over here. This was such a nice one, and I hated that it was limited edition because by the time I got this and I showed it on my channel, it was already sold out and they never brought it back. So there were a lot of viewers at the time who really wanted this, and the only place you could get it was, you know, if somebody was selling it on Mercari or something like that. So sadly, I'm gonna declutter this one too, but this was definitely a favorite. And then the last palette in the drawer is actually my Coastal Scents singles. So I did have quite a few of these. I was trying to recreate the ColourPop Good Sport palette, and I feel like I came pretty close with these colors. I remember showing these in a video just because a lot of people were asking how to get the Good Sport palette since it was discontinued. And at the time, Coastal Scents had these singles that were like $1 or $2 sometimes if they went on sale. So I made this palette out of the $2 singles, and it was so much fun. I really miss Coastal Scents. I felt like they had a decent formula, but more than that, it was affordable, you know, so you could really try out different colors without breaking the bank. So anyway, let's go ahead and do a final count. Okay, so for this drawer, I'm decluttering 16 palettes and keeping 11. Okay, so now that all the bins are done, I just have to tackle some of the palettes that are up here on top. I have quite a few, but you'll be happy to know that I did empty several bins. So we have this one that only has like 2 palettes from the Balm in it. This drawer is completely empty down here, and I have 2 empty drawers on the bottom over here. So I definitely made a lot of room. Some of these drawers are only half full as well. So I feel like I made such great progress. All right, let's go ahead and just see the last few that we have. Okay, so this is quite a lot of extras, and I'm going to try to go through these just as quickly as I can. Some of them are ones that I mentioned earlier in the video that I was missing, so I'll be able to put those in their home, and also some of these are from brands that we've already covered as well. So I guess let's start with this pile over here. I have this palette from Jane Iredale. This is the Storm Chaser palette, and I got this pretty recently, so I'm definitely going to keep it. I thought this was a beautiful formula. I remember using it in a video, and a lot of you guys were saying that you loved her eyeshadows, so I'm gonna keep this one. This is the Milani all-inclusive palette that I was missing with slightly warmer tones in it. So the other one I had was very cool toned. It had some grays, and this one I haven't even used yet. It's brand new. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick this in with my Milani eyeshadows. And also I found another Gilded Mini from Milani as well that I had forgotten about. So this one is Call Me Old Fashioned. So I must have been using this one and then I just didn't put it back in the right spot. So this one's definitely pretty. It has cool and warm neutrals. I also have another Alter Ego palette that I need to go put with the other ones. This is their Sakura palette, and this one's a dupe for Natasha Denona Retro Glam, and I think the color story was just spot on. So I'm going to put this with those. And you might remember in part one, I was saying that I had a Juvia's Place Violet palette. Here it is. So this one has all purples and it's a really, really beautiful one. So I'm going to keep this one as well. Next, we have Life's a Draft. This is Samantha March's palette with Ofra. So they had sent this to me in PR a while back and I've used it a couple of times. It was my first time trying Ofra's formula and I just thought these colors were so beautiful. They're right up my alley. Plus you have the face colors in here as well. So I'm also going to hang on to this one. I definitely need to play with it a little bit more. And I have the Tati Beauty palette. So this one I am going to keep. I feel like it's such a cult favorite. And also I heard something about her brand maybe coming back. So if she ended up re-releasing this or something, I guess we'll have to wait and see, but so many people are really huge fans of this palette and it definitely had an outstanding formula. My only thing that I'm not crazy about with this one is just that like each column is basically the same color over and over again. So I really feel like I only have, you know, some blues, browns, oranges, more browns, and then some rosy shades, but they're kind of, you know, I know she intended it to be that way, like all different textures of the same color, but I don't know. I would have liked a little bit more color variety, but again, I think the formula was really good. Also, there was a Huda Beauty palette that I missed, her Empowered palette. So I definitely want to keep this one as well. It had really warm tones. It's very smoky for the most part, and it's not my favorite palette of hers. But again, I do use this sometimes for comparisons, and it's a relatively new release, so I'm going to keep this one too. I also have a palette from M Cosmetics. This is their Divine Skies eyeshadow palette. So this one had really beautiful rosy shades, and I thought that the formula was really nice too. I kind of forgot about this one. It was way in the back on top of those bins, and I haven't played with it in a long time, but I really want to take this out again and use it. So I'm going to keep this. I also have some palettes from Beauty Bakery. And these, there's a little bit of a story behind these. Somebody from the company had reached out to me on Instagram years ago and asked if I would do swatches for them. And so I said, okay, like they were going to put the swatches on their website, show them on Instagram. So she sent me these few palettes and I spent all this time making the swatches and I sent them to her and she was like, wow, these are amazing. But then I never heard back. I just kind of got ghosted. So I felt like, you know, I did all this work and then nothing. And I mean, the formula is nice, but I don't know. I don't think I really want to keep these. This one is Sugar Cookies, and this one was Proof is in the Puddin', which was more of like a warm tone color story. So I'm going to put these in the declutter. This palette is from a brand that's no longer around, Milan Row. They had recently gone out of business this year, and this was the Poison Ivy palette. And I thought it was a beautiful green color story, and I thought their formula was nice too. They were an indie brand, and I saw, like I said, maybe a few months ago, they had posted on Instagram that they were closing down. So it's kind of sad, but I know like the pandemic years especially hit smaller businesses really hard. So I'm also gonna put that in the declutter. Here's another Beauty Bakery palette. This one is Breakfast in Bed. So this one, you know, I mean, it was pretty colors and all of that. Some of the shades were kind of getting hard pan though. I didn't feel like it was the greatest formula ever. So I'm gonna put this in the declutter. I also have another LA Girl Holiday palette. This one was called Dazzle All the Way. And this one, again, I love LA Girls formula normally, but for some reason, some of the holiday palettes just weren't the best. Like these, you can kind of see all of the shimmer shades got hard pan and they were just difficult to pick up. So I'm going to declutter this one. I wasn't really impressed. Next up, I have these two palettes from Laura Geller. They were her casual collection, and I was excited to see palettes from Laura Geller that were not the baked formula because I mean, I feel like the baked formula is okay, but it's not super pigmented. So I think I got these during the summer, like this past summer when she was having one of her huge sales that she usually has. So this one was the rose and taupe one. And like, I mean, the colors look beautiful, right up my alley. And I feel like, you know, the shimmer shades feel super nice, really smooth. The mattes also feel incredibly soft. I just don't know if these palettes are still around because she tends to discontinue things really quickly and come out with new stuff. So I don't know. I guess I'll keep these for now just because I don't know if they're still around. I kept meaning to talk about them on my channel and I never did. This is the beige and brown one. So I just felt like these were just very soft, easy to wear kind of neutral palettes. So all right, I'll hang on to these temporarily. We'll see what's going on. Otherwise, I might just gift them to someone in my family. Next, we have the Nightingale palette from Pretty Vulgar, and this one has survived several declutters. And I got this in a subscription box years ago, and I thought that the color story looked beautiful, but I never used it. And every declutter, I'm like, this is such a pretty palette. I love the cool tones. I'm going to use it. And then I never do. So I think it's just time to let it go at this point. It hasn't been touched. So this is another one that I'll definitely give to somebody. Wet n Wild Always Blushin'. This one, I definitely will just put with my Wet n Wild palettes because it's still available. I did drop it, so this shade ended up shattering. And I kept meaning to get the neutral version of this too, and I never did. And I felt like this formula was pretty good. I think I liked it better than their newer palettes that I showed earlier. I thought the mattes were just a little bit more grippy to the skin in these. So I think I'll hang on to this for right now. Then we have the Lime Crime Greatest Hits Bangers. So this one I think was just a collection of like best hits eyeshadows from all of their different palettes kind of all put together. The thing that I didn't like about this was a lot of the shimmer shades got hard pan. They do not pick up for anything. Like they're so hard. And if I scrape off the top layer, then I can use them again for a little bit. Then they get hard pan again immediately. So I think I'm just gonna declutter this one because I've had it for years and years and I just don't use it. Moving on, I have the CoverGirl Clean Color palettes. So these are their newest drugstore palettes. Again, kind of like e.l.f. Bite Size. They have 4 shades. These are a little bit more on the expensive side, but I think the formula is really good. They're very soft, very pigmented, not at all like what we used to see from CoverGirl in the past. I always felt like their shadows were very dusty, and these are nice. So this one is Shimmering Beige. Then we have Cool Berry with these beautiful rosy tones. Then this one is Dreamy Pink. It's got some warmer shades. I love this one. This is Mellow Mauve. And then this one is Golden Toffee. So it's a really beautiful neutral palette. So I'm going to keep all of these for sure. Next up, I had missed some palettes from Moira also, and I can't believe I forgot these. I had put all of my other Moira palettes in the baskets behind me and completely forgot about these. So I just want to go through all of the color stories really quickly. So this one is Golden Treasure, and I think the formula is pretty good in these. I don't feel like it's quite as good as their larger palettes, but it's good. I mean, especially for like a drugstore price, it's awesome. This one is Sugar Delight, which is really, really pale neutrals. Then we have Wineberry, which is beautiful cool purples. Viva La Rose has a couple of rosy tones mixed in with more neutrals. Twilight Dreams is a really pretty cool blue palette. Silver Mist is definitely one of my favorites. I love these colors. And then we have Sweetheart, which also has like a few pinks and some neutrals as well. So these are gonna go over with my Moira palettes. Next up, I have a couple palettes from Lottie London. So this one is Totally Mint and this one is Fired Up. So we got some warm tones and then some really pretty greens. And this formula is okay. I think these are like $7 palettes at Walmart, so they're really inexpensive. I think, you know, the shimmer shades, you can see they're not super smooth. They have a little bit of crumbliness to them, but they're pigmented. So, I mean, they're definitely workable. especially over a primer. So I'm gonna keep these for right now. All right, so 2 brands left. I have some Glamlite palettes. So first up is the Dirty Martini. So they have this whole drink series. And this one is actually the new one that I got. I had this one previously. I dropped it. It shattered everywhere. And I really liked this palette a lot. So I ended up getting a new one. And I thought the formula was really, really nice. I think Glamlite has an awesome formula, really pigmented. So I'm going to keep this one because I liked it enough to buy a new one. So I'm going to hold on to this. Then they had Wine, which had some purples. This one, I don't know. I mean, I like purple, but I feel like this is very dark purples overall, and I usually like kind of pale, dustier purple shades. So I may actually declutter this one. And I think same thing with Margarita. This is like bright pinks, and I just don't see myself wearing this. I actually haven't even ever worn this before. It's brand new, so this is another one that I can donate to a women's shelter because it hasn't been touched. So that's what I'm going to do with these. And then Chocolate Martini is another one that I really liked. I thought this color story was beautiful. I loved this duochrome shade here, and just the overall vibe of the palette is really nice. It's kind of warm and toasty and rich, but at the same time, it's got a mix of warm tones and cool tones. So I'm going to keep this one. And then I have the 2 Glamlite Michaela palettes, which I actually got at CVS a couple years ago. So these are her part 2 palettes. This one, again, lots of green in here. I thought some of the shades were really beautiful. I don't know if you can even still get these anymore, but I thought the formula was nice. I don't know if I should keep these. I'm kind of torn because I really didn't use them all that much. But at the same time, like, am I going to use them? I don't know. Let me just show you the bigger one. So this one, I mean, it's a beautiful palette. I love the color story, but I don't know. I mean, it has these really gorgeous duochrome shades. I love the purple. As you guys know, purple and green are kind of like my thing. So, all right, I might keep it. I don't even think I knew who Michaela was when I bought these. Like I said, I just bought it because I love purple and green. I mean, I know who she is now, but I bought them because I loved the colors. So I think that means I should probably hang on to them. And then last but not least, we have my Oden's Eye palette. So I'm just going to go through these really quick. I'm going to keep all of them because I love Oden's Eye. So this one is actually one that I got very recently. I had ordered some things over Black Friday, and I haven't even opened them yet. So this is this one. They were having a really big sale, so I just wanted to grab some palettes that I hadn't tried yet. So this was the chapter 1, and then chapter 2 had the cute kitty on it. So I'll show you what that one looks like. It's so pretty. It's like kind of these peachy shades mixed with the mint green. So I like that color combination a lot. Actually, when I was a teenager and I was growing up, I had mint green walls in my room, like this same color, with peach curtains. It was like my favorite combo at the time. So anyway, I'm keeping those. And then the next palette is also really pretty. This one kind of reminds me a little bit of the Zoeva palette that I kept, the butterfly one that had the purple and the neutrals, and even this kind of very similar greenish duochrome shade. So that's interesting actually. But I do like this one, so I'm gonna keep it. These two are also relatively new. I have the Stone and Rock palette, which I compared to the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, and it's like almost exactly the same. I think I showed them in a short, like a YouTube short, and it was really kind of eye-opening how similar they were, and this is like half the price. So I'm gonna keep that one. And then Jewels and Gem, again, a really, really pretty kind of more cool toned, dusty shades right up my alley. So I'm gonna hang on to this one. Then we have the Diva palette, which had beautiful rosy shades. And some of these just had like so much dimension. They're just really beautiful. So I'm gonna keep this one too. The Alva palette is another favorite of mine. Again, it has my colors in it and also a couple pops of yellow. So I'm gonna keep this one. And last but not least, I have the Christmas Eve palette. I have no idea where the Christmas Day one is. I know I have it around here somewhere. It's misplaced. I'll have to find it at some point. Maybe it fell behind the shelves or something. But this one really blew me away. This was like one of their best formulas ever. And I was just so impressed. Like this shade right here was a total surprise. It looks totally different when you swatch it. than it does in the pan. Like in the pan, it kind of looks purple, and then you swatch it and it's this unbelievable multi-chrome. Sorry, it's not picking up. Like, look at that. It's so, so pretty, and it just goes on so smoothly. So, all right, I'm gonna keep this one too. I didn't do quite as well as I thought with these, so let's do a final count. Okay, so for this pile, I am decluttering 10 palettes, keeping 37. So now I want to go ahead and just do a total final count between both videos. How many palettes did I have all together? How many did I declutter? And how many am I keeping? So I can't wait to see what the final number is. Okay guys, so final count for today's video, I'm decluttering 146 palettes and keeping 325. So I didn't do quite as well as I did last time, but the total count between part 1 and part 2, I started out with 840 palettes. I decluttered 325 and I kept 515. So I was able to let go of quite a bit. I still do have a really large collection, but like I said, I use my palette collection in a lot of comparison videos, and it just really helps me to have, you know, quite a bit. So anyway, guys, if you made it through both of these videos, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And stay tuned to my channel for more declutters coming up soon. I still have to do my blushes and bronzers, highlighters, and lip products. So if you're not subscribed, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you all in my next video. Take care, guys. Bye.